Hello and welcome to episode 434 of the Awesome Comics Podcast, the place where the small press makes one hell of a big noise. My name is Vince Hunt and joining me as always is the creator of the comic series Vanguard, Dan Butcher.
Hello.
And he's a vegetarian, so surely won't have the stomach for being a creature of the night. It's Tony Esmond.
We've got our cameras on, it's weird.
At what point are we going to turn them off, gentlemen?
It's going all right. It's going all right. We haven't put each other off.
Yeah. Welcome to
you see those videos where the bloke pretends to be Kermit the Frog and he always holds up a cucumber mid the fucking conversation? It's going to be like that, isn't it?
Well, right, it'd be pointless doing that because this is an audio-only show that you...
Just for you two.
You lovely people at home are, of course, listening to this show, and welcome. We are ongoing with our sort of spooky exploration of comics leading up to our Halloween special. Tony, any time Tony holds something up to the camera, I'm going to talk about it. He just
held
up a toy knife.
Toy?
Toy knife.
Yeah. So, but he's not allowed sharp objects, so that's clearly a lie. But, of course, this week we're going to be talking, I don't think there's been a show that we've had this month so far where we haven't mentioned vampires in any way, shape, or form, has there?
Yes.
And of course, when you think of horror, they're probably the number one of all sort of horror villains. Tony's now wearing a Batman mask. And so this week we're talking about the daddy of vampires, which is Dracula. We're having a bit of a Dracula conversation this week, and we were very pleased to be joined by Dacre, Stoker and Chris McCauly.
Wasn't that cool?
Oh yeah.
Well, it is cool because they're about to hear it in a bit.
They know their stuff, don't they?
Yeah. So if you think you know Dracula, you don't, and clearly we don't because they put us on the spot a couple of times, and we
I never fucking clue.
We didn't know.
There's a question coming up. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I like the way Vince sort of started answering it, so we just left it to him.
Yeah. Completely left me just blowing in the wind.
I pretended to go and pick something up.
Yeah.
There's something happening over there.
Yeah. But no, it was a fascinating insight into the sort of character of Dracula itself and like its lineages in all different types of media. And of course, the upcoming book, which we've spoken about on the show. We reviewed issue 1, wasn't it, Tony? I believe you talked to me.
Yeah.
So
just under a year ago, I'd say.
Yeah.
At that time, if you want to go back.
Yeah, and issue 2 is on its way now. It's crowdfunding now. So if you want to find out more about that, that's coming shortly. But you know what's coming now? I don't want either of you to answer that. We're just going to do the segue.
Comic House.
Thank you for sponsoring the show. Comic House. Yes, they are our lovely sponsor, as always. Pete and the Comic House crew doing what they can for indie comics because they love indie comics as much as we do and as much as you do if you're listening to this show. Cool. I almost used all the breath up in my lungs saying that bit.
Yeah, nice one.
It's nice watching you doing it.
Yeah.
And the show.
That's not the first time you said that.
Not since we shared that room together.
Yeah. Oh, what a night. There's a huge selection of titles on the Comic House database. If you self-publish your book, you can also list your work on there as well. Another avenue to get your comics out into the great white world. Great white world? Great wide world.
That's not a world we want.
I know. And I will say this, and we've got to say it from the beginning. Yes, I've already gone off topic with the sponsorship ad.
Are we still in the ad?
We're still in the ad, yeah. But
okay.
I just need to point out, just so everyone knows, we're recording this show earlier than normal, right? And sometimes when we do that, we have like a morning recording. Today we're doing it around...
I couldn't tell you what time it is. I don't know what time it is.
Around midday-ish, this is. And it's completely spun our heads. We don't know where we are, who we are, or in fact... And the fact that we've decided to use this time when we're decombobulated to have the cameras on is probably the worst idea possible.
Kind of
it's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. But what
the whole world's gone weird. It's a different place.
I know.
Do you ever wake up early and not know what your name is? It's a bit like that, isn't it? I don't know who I am or what I'm doing now.
Shall I tell you what world is weird?
What?
The world of Comic House?
No, Mars. Because humans have begun to colonize Mars, but something ancient and sinister got there first.
It's even worse when I can see him.
Now Vampirella is faced with a mystery only she can solve and the bloody realization that some monsters should never be awakened. And you can read that story on Comic House with
Really?
Aliens Vampirella.
You're a
Amazing.
class act, Mr.
Amazing.
Butcher.
Yes.
I thought I'd bring it back.
So
Yeah,
you
well
should.
done.
Thanks, ma'am. Someone had to. But basically,
Mars.
Comic
All
House.
6 issues on there. That's
It's good. It's good read that.
That's
Who's
a
it
really
written
good
by? It's written by
It
the
is
lady does a lot of
written
horror.
by
Um,
Karina Sara
Bechko.
Bechko.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
And artist by Xavier Garcia Miranda.
Oh yeah.
A
Fantastic
great
book.
series, and you can read it all on Comic House on their digital
Mm.
app, basically on Netflix for comics. £3 a month, you get access to an enormous library of digital indie comics. What else is on there at the moment, Dan?
Apart from Aliens versus Vampirella, there's a whole slew of titles. I'm sure there's plenty of horror ones. Let me have a look. The new releases on the app. We've got Bloop in the Pigeon Pandemic, which just finished Kickstarter, and we've got John Lee Nonlee Volume 1, Issue 4. Let's tell some stupid stories. Sicko Volume 1, Headless Volume 1, Contract Zero, The Long Game, and finally Viper Crimson Dawn.
Yes,
I released about a year ago.
Wow, is that a year?
Yeah.
Crowdfunded it about a year ago now.
Wow, wow. Tony's now wearing a Carolina Panthers baseball cap.
Yeah.
And if you want to find out more about those comics and more, start a 14-day free trial. Tony's wig's fallen off. To find out more,
Not syrup. This is a gold mortal.
it fell
chocolate
right
waffle.
off his head. Go to comichouse.com to find out more. And thank you to them, as always, for sponsoring the show. Yes, all jokes aside, we're talking about one of the greatest evils that ever faced comics. And I think I can say, I think it's pretty certain that most of our listeners, if not all, and certainly all of us here on the show, in some way, shape, or form, we've read a comic book that has Dracula in it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's all
But
over.
now-
He's in everything, isn't he?
He's
all over the place.
Yeah, yeah. Never, but fuck the rest of media. We don't care about that right now because this is about
Whenever you read a
comics.
comic with a vampire in it, the question's in the back end. When's Dracula turning up?
Yes. Yeah.
When's Dracula turning up? Because these are all the minor bad guys to when
Yeah.
he turns up.
I mean, he was all over Storm at one point, wasn't he? If there's a lady in the X-Men universe I'd like to get with, he's done it, hasn't he?
See,
He's done all right.
Right, this is the interesting thing. Obviously, there's been many different Draculas, and there are many different iterations, aren't they? Each publisher has their own version of it in some ways, shape, or form. When I think of classic comics, those 50s, 60s comics, or whatever, the one that goes in my head now is the Tomb of Dracula look. The cape, the moustache. What was the actor that played that Dracula? Is it Peter? Oh, I've forgotten his name now.
Langert? No.
There was a someone who portrayed Dracula in the movies, and he had that kind of Tomb of Dracula kind of look.
Is the dude from Naked Gun?
Leslie Nielsen.
Yeah.
Although he was dead and loving it.
Yeah.
Is it? It's not. No, I'll think of the.
What was the film period?
Frank Langella.
No. I'll think of the name later. And
Okay.
I'll just say this, and you'll know
Paul
I've
Nashi.
thought of it.
Paul Nashi.
Because I'll just say the name out loud, and they'll be like,
Yeah,
"What?"
just say it randomly in the
what
night
was
when
that?
you wake
Yeah,
up.
but Tomb of Dracula is definitely one of those. When you first delve into it, as I did, because I didn't read it like when I was first getting into comics. I didn't read it probably.
You weren't born.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah,
when it
But
came out, fair
even like the old sort of books you pick up sometimes, I didn't know about it. And I think around the 90s as well, a lot of comicdom had forgotten about that, hadn't it? That the Tomb of Dracula was pushed to the back of like the comic book marketplace, wasn't it? It was only
It's one of those
later.
things you could get cheaply for a while, and then people had no, come on, this is great, and then it became more expensive, didn't it?
Was that
Do you
around
remember?
the Essentials kind of time when they decided to
Yeah.
collect it?
Yeah, the Essentials went silly money, didn't they, for a while?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
probably the resurgence of Blade, because it was like
Yeah.
because where did Blade originally come from? Oh, and it was in this. He was a Tomb of Dracula.
Tomb of
character,
Dracula.
Yeah. But that character has changed a lot in the Marvel universe, haven't they? I remember reading. I think it was an X-Men book ages ago. I think when they did that, I don't know, some massive vampire event I wasn't really interested in. I think the one where Jubilee became a vampire.
Yeah.
And a yawn.
Yeah, the Tomb of Dracula isn't really the one we see now, is it?
No.
You
No.
know, yeah.
The one I can think of.
But neither's Blade.
Yeah.
No,
true.
yeah,
Completely
true.
Blade from Tomb of Dracula is very different now. Yeah.
You would have
But
thought like the good guys and the bad guys would be getting on board with taking Dracula out because like he's a threat
Yeah.
to.
Well, there's been an
as far as
Avengers
the general-
vampire war, isn't there? There's recently.
Okay.
Yeah, he pops up everywhere. I don't know. Sometimes I like it. Sometimes I don't. I don't know. It depends on the writer.
depends on the writer and what the concept. When you have a Dracula within any kind of comic universe, and I think this extends beyond like big publishers and stuff. It's all in the story, isn't it? And their motivations. Because Dracula isn't one of those, I'm going to take over the world and make everyone a vampire. And whenever I sort of see those stories, I kind of switch off to it. Does that make sense? Dracula feels a more smaller. I mean, he's a major threat in a smaller story for me sometimes.
Yeah, kind of the character bemusing themselves as opposed to like with these massive overarching goals of ruling everything. So I just want to kind of be the top dog where I am and not overreaching. Yeah.
And it's always like one step ahead, isn't it? It's almost the OG big villain. Well,
it's great. Like Chris mentioned in the interview you've got coming up about like the traps he lays that sort of I didn't really consider, but like the Lucy thing. That's a really interesting point coming up. So check that one out.
And
kind of the master manipulator is a great villain.
Absolutely, and I think the manipulator is a brilliant way to put it down because that's what the character is, isn't it? It's a real they're evil. There's the potential to be very evil, and sometimes in comics Dracula isn't evil enough. Do you ever find that?
I think that's where they counterplay that whole suave, like you say, the suave, always in a DJ kind of character. That when he does go feral, it's more of a shock sometimes. When he moves over. And
some people play with the power set as well, don't they? They're like
very much so.
They treat it. I don't know about you guys.
You're the sort of Doctor Strange crossovers. I mean, that's an interesting combo, I think. Sometimes.
Yeah, and I think because Doctor Strange has one foot in horror anyway, doesn't it?
Plus, they look the same, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean, the Dracula characters like just Midnight Suns. I don't understand why they don't have a really decent Midnight Sun series going where he's like one of the
that would
be
so
it's
good.
on the way.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. You've got such a wealth of characters and backgrounds and stuff you can work into it, and I don't know why they're not.
Well, we're seeing a rise of that group again in Marvel at the moment. Whether it'll be done well or not, I can't hazard a guess.
Yeah. But is this Midnight Suns going to have like Wolverine in it? If so, I'm not really interested.
If it's going to have
or Deadpool or Spider-Man,
all that. If it's going to have Johnny Blaze with a shotgun that fires fucking hellfire, I'm bang up for it.
Yeah,
I mean that's the bit I want. Yeah.
Well,
speaking of Midnight Suns, my pick for my favourite vampire, we had a chat before, was is Morbius.
Yeah.
Now this is interesting because you said this on the WhatsApp earlier in the week, and Tony, take it away, and then I'll drop something. Go on.
Okay. So Morbius has had various stages in his comic career.
Yeah.
Villain, Amazing Spider-Man, started in 101. Not in 1971. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
That's how old he's been.
They always
going.
start off as villains, don't they? They're like wrestlers.
Some of them
they come
do,
in
don't
as
they?
bad guys, and then they turn face.
Yeah. And then we had my favourite period, which I'm about to talk about. And then we had like the Midnight Sun stuff, which I didn't catch on for me quite as much. And then there's been various attempts. There was a series a couple of years ago, an ongoing that failed. There's been various attempts, but it's probably the way that it was done and the creators involved that I dug it the most. But it was when he appeared in Adventure into Fear, he goes into space. Now, doesn't sound automatically the gothic horror that we're about to talk about with those two guys, but I really love this, and it's written by Steve Gerber, who pretty much couldn't step a foot wrong, even when he was just doing it to wind people up. With art by P. Craig Russell and inks by Vinnie Colletta. Vinnie Colletta gets a bad name for erasing lots of Kirby's backgrounds, but he's actually not, I actually don't mind his ink line. Yeah, it's quite nice. So he's lost in another world, galaxy, reality, whatever you want to call it, and he fights sci-fi barbarians, strange alien races, mutants and stuff like that. And he comes across a creature that I sent you the picture of, did I? That's just a big eyeball.
Yeah.
It's called Lord and then the letter I.
Yeah.
Right. Who's a bit sheepish around him. He's the potentate of Arcturus, which is proper hard sci-fi, isn't it? You got to imagine this was long before Star Wars. And there's a load of mutants who turns up, and Morbius refers to them as freaks. And this potentate says they're not freaks. they're mutants, and mutants are now the norm, which makes you the freak, which is this really interesting counterplay. But because he's in space, he has this. He still has to get blood from people, and it's not quite the same because they're not human, etc., etc. And he bites this sort of sexy lady, female barbarian, and there's this really amazing moment where the eye closes of this potentate, and one massive tear comes out because he's transgressed that society. And it's so beautifully told. It's so artistically beautiful and so poetical. And from that point, I thought, this is just freaky as fuck. It's that sort of weird sci-fi we got back then. And I think that he then comes back to Earth, fights Blade, la 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 la, all goes on. But it's not a long run. And you can find them for 50p, these comics, And I just really, really like that. Really stuck with me. It's so peculiar and so strange. It's horrific.
Okay.
It unnerves you, And then they did the Midnight Suns, and I wasn't into it. But it's a shame. I liked him as this sort of quasi-tragic. Yeah, he is a villain, but he's an understandable villain.
I think that's one of the issues. Well, I mean, the way you're describing that, Tony, that sounds like something I want to read, like an arc I want to read.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, when you say space vampires, you think it's an immediate win, but sometimes they're not. It doesn't deliver. Yeah. But certainly with Morbius, that's a Morbius story I'd read, because I'm not a fan of Morbius, and I never have been. I just never. It never. I mean,
the Spidey stuff and that got me. I was into it.
Yeah.
You got the Paul Gulacy art and all this sort of thing, but after that, it just became dire 90s comics as far as I was concerned.
What was the tagline for Morbius? Was it the living vampire?
The living vampire.
Living vampire.
Because he does it. He's not bitten or anything. He gets a blood disease, so he cures himself with science and some black vampire bat venom or something.
Yeah. Okay. Does he always look like the sort of vampiric look in that?
In those
space vampire one.
Yeah, he does in that. Yeah, with that, okay. So it's a superhero costume he's got, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a cunning play on Dracula's colours, but in a superhero costume.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why don't you like him, V? Why is he not your taste?
It was just sort of I don't know. I think that's not the sort of vampire I want. And it's kind of like that peanut butter and jam or jelly sort of thing, that vampires within the superhero realm don't always really do it for me. In much the way that we've spoken about Frank Castle's Punisher existing almost outside the bubble of the superhero universe. Yeah. Like the things like the Midnight Suns and the Blades and probably Ghost Rider and things like that. It's almost like theirs is another sort of sub pocket of the Marvel universe. Me personally, I don't really want an interaction between Ghost Rider and Captain America. I don't want Morbius hanging out with Deadpool or anything like that.
Yeah, I understand.
There's different flavours, isn't there?
I make you right, that man. Yeah. I don't want anyone hanging about with Deadpool, to be fair. But yeah.
So when you put them, and I think that's probably why I've missed out on many great stories that were purely.
I mean, this is a matter of 5 comics in the history of man. It's probably been in 100, but it just caught me at the right time. Sometimes when you've only got that comic in the back of a car as a kid, and you think, wow,
I think one of the things that we miss now, probably as a comics reading culture, is because everything has a universe now. There is, even if you've got your own solo title, it won't always be your solo title. Do you know what I mean? The universes are so cross-pollinated, and everyone.
Oh, there's going to be a issue 2 or issue 3 Batman / Spider-Man / Wolverine crossover.
If you're in the DC universe, there's going to be a Bat character probably within your first 5 issues, because they think that sells, or that sort of thing. I know that's not a fact. That's just something I'm saying.
Definitely.
Yeah, but. I think with the problem of that is some of the strongest stories that came from those old comics, the joy of looking through the back issue bins and stuff, is seeing those titles when it's just that character. It's just Werewolf by Night. It's just Morbius. It's just...
That's the runs we want to buy and read because we're interested in that character.
And the problem, like for instance, take a Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing, when it's at its strongest, it was almost... so horror and so gothic, it was very difficult to have that character integrate into the superhero universe, wasn't it? Really, you'd have to go to make a true horror character in comics. they're almost impossible to interact with your main heroes. Does that make sense?
Alan Moore does one of
the Justice
Swamp Thing
League
and Superman, doesn't he? It's like the Man of Tomorrow, where he gets that Kryptonian plant that sort of infects him, and Swamp Thing has to help him out. That's like that's a really well done story.
Swamp Thing crosses over with a lot of people, but in my head, it does it in its own terms. So you get like Enemy Ace, you get Martian Manhunter, you get the Justice League. You know, there's a lot going on there, but it does it in a horrific way and on his own terms. It doesn't just suddenly become a Justice League story, and it shouldn't do.
Yeah,
you know, if there should be a reason for it to cross over.
Swamp Thing, that gets me a little bit nervous because Swamp Thing is such a character that is, as you say, it overtakes the narrative in some way.
Has to be an adjacent character.
Yeah.
So you can have Wolverine crossing over into Deadpool. That's fine. They're both mutants. They're both in the same age. But you definitely don't want, Captain Marvel crossing over with Deadpool. That would annoy me.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's the problem with a lot of horror characters, isn't it? Like when they become a moneymaker, when they become a bigger title, there is let's have them cross over with other people. And take a Dracula, one of the biggest villains of all time. As soon as you have, one of the issues I have is, as soon as you have Dracula versus, it's a very interesting cover. Tony's holding up Crypt of Shadows, which
came out this week, which is not a horror book because it's got
Hulk,
Deadpool,
Scarlet Witch,
Daredevil, Hulk, and Scarlet Witch in it.
Of course. What a natural grouping that is. But as soon as you have Dracula, which, as we've established, one of the Mac Daddies of all villains, and you say it's Dracula versus Superman, well, I know who's going to win then. Do you know what I mean?
Just kind of a bit
and
of
as soon as you have people saying Dracula doesn't stand a chance, you've lost.
Yes, the villain's got to have some kind of threat. Yeah. So I dug out one of the vampire versus superhero trades that I know I had. And it's an issue of a trade of the JLA, the 10th Circle. You guys ever read this? The Doom Patrol and the JLA go up against a vampire called Crucifer. And
was it in the 90s?
I think it might have been the 90s.
Yeah.
So it's actually written by Chris Claremont, penciled by John Byrne, and the finishings by, I think, Jerry Ordway.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
So these teenage kids with minor superpowers start disappearing from across the US and across the world, and this Crucifer guy, who's a vampire, is getting them all together so basically he can bring the kind of departed souls of his compatriots into their bodies and resurrect them as kind of like superpowered vampires, and the Doom Patrol and Justice League got to stop him. At one point Superman is under Crucifer's mind control, which is interesting because obviously with the Superman character, he's got no real defenses against any kind of magics. And in that, he's like slapping around Wonder Woman and they don't really stand a chance. It's quite funny, but obviously the guys went out. That always seems to go to, if there's kind of like going to fight, it's going to be Superman, Wonder Woman, if one of them gets mind control. Because,
Batman usually hides behind a shed or something like that.
If it's going to be like Wonder Woman, Batman would get fucking minced.
Yeah.
So here's an interesting
shed.
It shows like Crucifer, he talks about his life through the age, and they always do this in comics. The vampires always end up in the Nazi army. There's always shots them.
We got Fiends of the Eastern Front, haven't you? Which is like a German. Is it a tank regiment? They're all Nazi vampires.
I remember Baron Blood, Captain America. He's like
I like
working
that.
Nazis.
Funny enough, I looked at that page today where Captain America's he's about to bite Captain America, which was kind of the cliffhanger in the UK comic series, and then he can't because it's chainmail.
Chainmail.
Yeah. Seems a bit shit excuse.
Like chainmail suit. Like, here's a question.
Defeated a vampire. Yeah. Chainmail.
Hypothetical question.
Okay.
The Allies lose the war, and there's comic makers who are going to incorporate vampires into the Allies' army, and how do you think they would go about doing that? But in the same way they are like Western kind of artists and
reverse engineering.
Reverse engineering. So it's the other side. So the Allies have maybe not one to answer now.
Well, the thing is, it's essentially when it comes to stuff like this, it's a propaganda message, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, propaganda.
Yeah, so because it is essentially this is an evil. Let's put it upon the thing that we think is evil and give it to the masses. That's.
But it's also
which is dangerous fucking territory for
like reality TV.
It's an ontological evil,
the
isn't
greatest
it?
evil of all.
Like nothing you could do to a vampire would be wrong. You could argue that because they're just fucking evil.
Don't, Tony. I can see you thinking.
Depending on how you portray them. So maybe that's maybe don't tell that story, but maybe an interesting.
Vampire ladies are generally pretty sexy, aren't they?
They're always kind of in my limited.
So there's always the bloke who gets bitten by the sexy vampire, isn't there? There's always he's always caught out by she's sexy. I'll go back to her boudoir. Oh no, she's a vampire. I would get caught out like that every single time.
You'd be like,
It kind of some of this is slightly going to tie into my eerie pick later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've got an eerie pick too with vampire, and I hope we don't cross the streams.
I hope you've done the same one again.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second because I think let's get stuck in.
It's time.
Let's really put our fangs into the neck of this subject.
Let's bite into this one.
Let's really, and I tell you what,
enough of amateur hour Russell. Let's get onto the.
Yeah, this is one conversation that doesn't suck because
Two fangs up.
Yeah, we are talking to Dacre Stoker and Chris McCauley. Well, about Dracula themselves. Here you go. Right then, we are very pleased this week to be joined by the creators behind the spooky new Dracula title, Dracula The Return, Cult of the White Worm. We've talked about a bit on the show before, haven't we, Tony? I remember.
Yeah, I think Shane gave me a copy at Nottingham, which was about a year ago, I'm going to say. I think it was just about to come out, and we've known Shane for years, so he gave me a copy of that. We loved it. It was really good.
Yeah. And as we're getting into all things Dracula this week, it just made sense to talk to the two of the creators behind the book, Dacre Stoker and Chris McCauley. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for having us. And, it is the season, so may as well talk Dracula during the Halloween season.
Yeah, it's the best
season. It's great to be here. I did catch your review of issue 1, and just want to say thanks for doing that.
Our pleasure, man.
It was wonderfully positive, so thank you for that.
Great stuff, man. It's good comics. Yeah. And we should probably mention the artist on it as well. So who was your artist?
We've got Chris Geary for the main strip. We've got Matt Soff for wonderful colours, and then we have David Hitchcock for side strips and stuff like that.
Brilliant.
There's so much to get into with this book, and certainly the upcoming title that's coming soon. But first, I think we're in the good position to talk about Dracula right now. And as I say, it's kind of like the daddy of all villains when it comes to just any media, I think. Like one of the, if you say the greatest villains of all time, surely one of the top 3 ever. But in terms of comic books,
after Loose Women, I'm going to say, which is your equivalent of The View, Dacre, angry women.
Okay.
Yeah. Your Dracula would never be seen on it because it's a daytime show.
Nicely done.
Thank you. But Dracula himself, what is it about that character and that universe that applies itself so well to like comics and the sequential medium and things like that, in your guys' opinion?
Well, yeah, I'll start. When you really consider this, and I've been analyzing this for 15 years. I've been delving into my great-granduncle's work and what research went into it, its inspiration. He created his Dracula out of mythology. He created it out of a real person. He merged things together. So he grabbed a little bit of everything. And I will have to say, the number of treatises that I have found, and Bram actually mentioned this in the one interview he ever gave. He found this all over the world. At least 12 different countries he found mythology about real scare and real vampirism. And that's back in 1890 when he found that with the resources he had. I'm sure if you did research today, it would be every society has some fascination with the undead, some sort of a creature, spirit creature, something that's coming out after the living, and it's either looking for mischief or looking for a good time or looking to suck the blood. So the fact that exists in the world makes it sort of an easy target to then create interesting things out of: literature, comics, stage, film, toys, board games, RPG games. That is the genesis, is in reality a real worry that people had. And then the final thing before I hand this over to Chris, because we talk about this a lot when we're developing things, is in the novel Dracula that Bram wrote, the character Count Dracula only appears in about 30% of the pages. He exists in the minds, the psyche, the concerns, the worries of the characters throughout the whole novel. And that's, I think, where his place is. He is out there. We all know about it. We're scared to death of it. We don't always see him. So he's fertile for artists, screenwriters, and so on to create their own version of it. Bram did create one. And that's what McCauly and Stoker are doing, are bringing back the Man in Black. But it leads itself for many other adaptations. And that's why he's gone into comics, graphic novels, children's stuff in all different forms, because it's not wrong. It's just people's reimagining and their interpretation of what Bram started back in 1897.
I mean, there's also I know it's something we'll probably talk to you a bit about, Dacre, maybe before we move on to Chris, there is an apparent watering down of the character. And I know since, I'm going to say 2009, I've only got that from your Wikipedia page, sorry about that. It says that you've kind of moved to take it back on, to try and impress back into the character as he was originally conceived.
Yeah, there's nothing against all the different stage and film adaptations, and that's great. That has helped the character and the story proliferate worldwide.
Okay,
but we do have to. I've looked at this very, very sort of pragmatically. Bram's Count Dracula was a dark, horrifying revenant from the grave, not a sexy type creature. That happened starting in 1924, when the stage adaptations needed the type of person that would attract audiences to come into the stage to watch Dean and Balderston, and actually Florence Stoker's adaptation of Dracula. They needed the suave, sexy Eastern European Bela Lugosi looking guy in a dinner jacket. Had they put Bram's Dracula on stage, people would have run out of the theater. And so it was a necessary adaptation at the time. And from there, of course, we saw Lugosi, we see Lee and Langella and Palance and Oldman as technology, CGI, as creative writers and art directors decide that, what can we do a little different than the one before us? They've made him a little more human, a little more sparkly in some cases, a little more sexual. So that was the sign of the times to attract people into the theaters, both stage and screen. And then, of course, this is what writers do. Ian Holt and I did this in 2009. We create our own version, but he is Bram's version, but doing new and different things, put him in different places. And that's what Stoker and McCauley are doing. That's what I did with J.D. Barker with Dracula, the prequel. So you want to take what you're given by Bram, and we don't want to change them too much because that's been done, but sort of bring people back to the basics, back to understand how horrifying that original Dracula really was.
I get you. So, Chris, how did you two hook up? How did this become a project for both of you?
Yeah, I wrote a comic strip as a favour for a friend. He was doing a horror anthology, and they were doing like a sci-fi theme.
What was that, mate?
It was like a sci-fi theme they did. It was called 13th Moon, and I wrote this comic strip called Dracula, Lord of the Future. And in it, a Wade Angiotani style company comes, excavates Dracula, takes him to a space station, tortures him, and starts to drain him of his blood for its various properties to turn him into pharmaceutical chemicals. As Dracula is chained up with silver, he reflects upon his previous lives and says, although he's always known violence, he's never known such indignity. And with that, then he decides he's going to get out and kill every fucker on that space. So this is this was the start. I see Dracula as a dark, brutal bastard. He doesn't live in the light in any sense. So he gets out, he kills everybody, and he literally paints all the pristine, 2001-esque space corridors, red with blood. And all sorts of things in there. So, and then he escapes in a spaceship, a little spacecraft, and buggers off. so that was the ending of it. But I sent the script to the Bram Stoker estate. Look, if you don't want me to portray Dracula in this way, because I have a tremendous respect for all of Bram Stoker's work, just let me know and I'll just change the name of the vampire. And then Dacre rang me up, I think about 6 or 7 hours later after he received the email.
Oh, nice.
And it was like, hey, do you want to do some Bram Stoker comics? Do you want to start? We started by bringing one of Bram Stoker's short stories, the unfortunately titled Squaw, to the shelves. It was known as The Virgin's Embrace. I retitled it, and we had Jessica Martin there as the artist, and it's a beautiful piece of work. It's part of what we're terming as the Bram Stoker Treasury. And then we kind of moved on from there. We went into audio dramas. We went into then, novels, comic books, audio, the RPG games, tabletop games, and now we've got a video game. We'll have a playable demo in 2 days' time, 2 or 3 days' time.
Awesome.
Oh wow! Okay.
Nice.
So we've got into
the empire.
Yeah, we've got into everything, and there's more to come with all of this. But essentially, it was, I think, Dacre and I we've got similar ideas about Dracula when it comes to that brutality. I think we were both fed up with the highly sexualized vampire. I mean, he's dead. His penis doesn't work. That's why. That's the
quote of the episode. You never think about it. You never think about
penis does not work.
It's if you look at the Freudian analysis of why he feeds,
why he bites. Yeah.
And I mean that's it. And you see that, and that's how he proliferates. That's how vampirism comes out. It's through the blood. It's also there's theories about venom as well in the mouth, because you see that in Batman Red Rain. There's all sorts of theories about like vampirism and stuff.
There's a sort of verminous nature to your stories as well, which is an interesting angle. You see it occasionally, don't you? Not like you say though, not often, and that stems a lot from the original text. Is it not? Yeah.
Because Dacre will be able to tell you about this, but every time there was a plague or something went wrong, everybody blamed vampires. So Dacre,
I tell my wife when I'm late home from the pub.
No, that's what I mean. Listen, I've dug into and found 98% of the books Bram used for his research. I've been into the libraries that he was in. I can see because he signed into them, so I know what he looked at.
Okay.
And there's a lot of these treatises, Chris says, about suspected vampirism in the early 18th century, and it was all about contagious disease, plagues, cholera, rheumatic fever, all these things, and of course, Nosferatu, the film, picked that up with the rat-like Orlok. Although I say that gently because that was a pirated version of Bram's book. They never paid for the rights
because
to it.
The Herzog version of that is the streets are full of rats, aren't they? Yeah,
exactly.
It's an amazing film. Yeah.
So very and of course Bram has Dracula turn into rats, turn into bats, all these creatures of the night that do spread, rabies and other disease. So it's not that far of an extension for Chris and I to use that theme in our stories as sort of underlining themes.
Interesting.
Because the character that, like himself, like you say, before there was Dracula, there was fear, wasn't there? It was taking all these different elements of fear, whether it be disease, the undead, anything you don't understand. Like the great fear is the stuff you don't understand. And what Stoker did was pretty much distill that into a person. And when you make it, I don't know, I don't know what is killing me. When you know the villain, it creates a completely different dynamic, doesn't it? Because everything stems. The evil is now a singular point in a story, which I think is probably why he's lasted so long. That character's just got so much legs. One of the great villains of literature, and like you say, taking all these basic elements and putting it into one person. But the romanticism of it is something. I love the fact that you're going back to the brutality and the darkness of it, because as much as we like how suave he looks, when you have a knowledge of Dracula or from those sort of films that you watch, and the first time you read the original text, it is a real surprise. The old, the grey-haired man that crawls like a spider out the walls. I remember when I was a kid reading it, just thinking, this is way creepier. This isn't what I thought it was going to be. So how do you keep hold? What is the key to almost dismissing what most people know and going back to the root of why this character is so powerful as they were originally intended?
Well, Vince, that is the big question. It is a big departure, and we acknowledge the fact, even though the book's in public domain, 30 different languages, we recognize that the audiences that Chris and I get in front of have probably not read the book, but they think they know the book, they know the story through film or comics or games, and so we're sort of having to ease that back a little bit. You can't directly go and be disrespectful for everything that got them into the world or the sandbox that Chris and I play with. So we've got to sort of ease them back a little bit. It's one of the reasons why we started, with one of Bram's other short stories turning it into a graphic novel. And we've got plans to do others. And then we sort of eased Dracula with Dracula The Return, Cult of the White Worm. We actually merged one of the stories, Lair of the White Worm, that Bram did. That White Worm becomes the ultimate evil. So we've got to do it gently to let people understand it, rather than slap them in the face and say, you don't know what you're talking about. That's not going to get us anywhere. What we need to do is bring that Dracula back in a way that people will want to embrace it. Just to touch on the sexuality side for a minute, I've got a friend, John Browning, who wrote a book on all this, about Dracula and visual media. And if you got to look at the sign of the times when the Dracula films were getting very popular, the horror side was huge, but so was the risque element. If you wanted to go and see cleavage, flesh, women sort of exposing themselves to this suave guy, you went and watched a horror film. You didn't go see a porn or X-rated film. That wasn't even out there because censorship was so tough. Censorship was quite tough on Dracula films. It wasn't until 1958 when you could see blood coming out of Christopher Lee's mouth. You didn't see any blood in Bela Lugosi. You didn't even see fangs. So what you're seeing was, this is, the early movies when these ladies were in their sheer negligees and so on, that was as sexual as it would get. And then the thing moved into the sort of the 60s and the 70s, when other movies were starting to show skin and flesh. So the Dracula movies, the vampire movies, had to become better themselves rather than just a little horror and a little flesh. So Anne Rice, Interview of the Vampire, Stephen King, Salem's Lot, and then of course the 92 Coppola comes around. It is romantic, but there's not as much necessity to show flesh. So that metamorphosis of kind of a lot of flesh and back down again, because you can go watch an X-rated movie, R-rated movie anywhere now, but the vampire movies have to be good. And that's what Chris and I are having to deal with, is we've got to make these stories interesting, but they've got to be based in the information that I have dug up over the years. What did Bram leave out of Dracula? What stopped in his notes? What was taken out of the typescript that Chris and I can use as material? So that's the way we stay relevant to the original source, but kind of ease people to our way of thinking.
That's got to be super fun for you, Chris, being able to go through these notes and stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good to get back to the original roots of the character. Certainly, I mean, I've no interest in writing romance at all.
Not a Twilight sequel. Come on.
No, absolutely not. No. I love the sort of the 30 Days a Night vampires, apex predators, all that sort of stuff. But Dracula is even different from that. I mean, Dracula is a very intelligent hunter, and he lays traps for people, and he's a narcissist. He's a supreme narcissist, and he is absolutely evil. There is no redemption in Dracula whatsoever. There is nothing there. There's no light in him. So if I can take you guys back to the scene in the book, and I wrote this was in Voices of Dracula, and Jessica voiced it. Jessica Martin voiced this as Mina.
Oh, cool. We know Jessica.
The scene where the scene where Mina is drinking from Dracula's chest, and everybody's seen this in a couple of films, and it's, oh, isn't this so sensual and all the rest of it. What we did with that was we reasoned that Dracula's a dead body. So whenever he takes his dirt-encrusted, elongated fingernail and cuts open his breastplate, and the blood and the pus starts to ooze out, and he takes Mina's head, slams it into his chest, she's forced to drink that. And there's a reason for this. This is a form of unholy communion. And anybody who knows anything about the occult knows that blood and pus are used in an unconsecrated wafer. This is what I believe that Bram Stoker's really getting at.
Right,
This form of unholy communion. But he does it at the time period that he knows that the band of heroes are going to come in. He looks at Jonathan Harker, takes Mina's face, proudly shows Harker what has happened to his wife, and throws her across the room. And it's almost a challenge of, now do you want her? And Harker's a hero, because what does Harker do? Immediately runs towards his wife. And these are the points of light in Dracula. You know, we've got a lot of the darkness, but there's the points of light in Dracula. And I think, you know, Harker's actually one of the lights. You know, Dacre and I are redressing this whole thing about Harker being a milksop and a bit of a cuck and a coward and all of that. Yeah. The guy escapes Dracula's castle. He maintains a form of sanity. He comes back to London, and when he's asked, you know, do you want to go up against this guy again? And he, more than anybody, perhaps even more than Van Helsing, knows what he's up against. And what does he say? Yeah, let's do it.
I mean, he's an 80s VHS action hero, just that no one ever realised it, isn't it, really? It's that totally... If you think about it, because logically, and it's always the obvious, isn't it? Like you say, Harker's got this whole, he's such a weak character, he does all this, but he literally escapes from the darkest place and decides to go back at it. Is there anything braver than that? Do you know what I mean? But everyone just thinks Jonathan Harker's a bit...
Well, that's why I think he's got a good marriage with Mina, because Mina essentially does the same. So after she encounters Dracula in that horrific scene, and she's infected, she still continues to want to help destroy this creature. Right. So completely different from Coppola's ending. You have Mina Harker who wants to destroy this evil in this world because she recognizes it for what it is. This narcissist, demonic individual who just has to be stopped at all costs.
Did you have something there, Dacre? Yeah.
I want to ask Vince and the rest of you sort of not to put you on the spot, skill testing question here.
Oh God,
Vince, you mentioned Harker escaping from the castle. In whatever rendition comes to your mind, either first, second, or third, and any of you guys here, how does Harker escape from the castle?
I was just going to think that as Vince was talking about it, and I cannot recall.
Yeah. Anybody? Because if you're listening here, other than the guys on this panel here, what do you think? How do you think he got out? We know where he ended up.
Yeah,
right? He ended up in Budapest, right? In the convent, being taken care of by Sister Agatha.
I'm thinking.
Are you saying he's allowed to escape? Is that what you're saying, Dacre?
No. I'm not making any judgment at the moment.
I'm thinking of things, but it's almost like I'm not sure if my mind's just making it up now.
Go for it.
Like,
yeah, that's it.
Did he escape down the side of the castle? Did he climb out? Did he? No, because there's that bit where he looks out the window and Dracula's on the wall climbing up. Oh.
Yeah. You in a way, you're right. He did have to climb out, but that's only to get to another window. On the evening that he caught Dracula in the room and he tried to kill him. But I'll take you out of your agony. And you know, it's a great question, Tony. What am I leading to? I'm leading to the fact that it wasn't in the story.
Okay.
It was not in his notes. And I've actually seen the Dracula typescript, and I've seen things that were taken out. First 3 chapters were taken out, and the ending was changed.
Oh, wow.
But the problem with the novel Dracula back in 1897 is it was already at capacity as far as length of the story goes. Paper was very expensive, ink was expensive, the printing process expensive. That was the extent of what a book could be. Bram had lots of ideas. He didn't include much about the voyage of the Demeter. He just had a ship's log, and now it's turned into a movie years later.
Yeah.
But Chris and I are actually, without spoiler, are filling in what we believe to be in keeping with what Bram led us to believe about Harker in the castle and other things, and the fact that he is a hero and he's very resourceful, how he got out, which can't tell you just yet.
Okay.
But to me, it's fascinating because it's one of the key elements that we, just like Vince, like you said, we think we kind of get it.
Yeah.
But it never really happened. There was no description of it.
Yeah.
We might put that to our audience and ask them when we put the episode.
Exactly.
It's like the voyage itself. I mean, we all know. I mean, it's one of the classic moments of the book, and it's just such a short part of it, really. But because it only hints at things, the reader almost paints the picture in their head of what happened on that journey.
Yeah.
Yes, it's much more terrifying, I think, that way. When everything is sort of, you get the idea, Dracula's in one of the crates of dirt, and bad shit's going to happen.
Yeah.
There's mist, which is Dracula's power.
Yeah.
And as the crewmen either jump overboard to avoid Dracula or get vamped, that the ship can't sail itself. So something's going on. I will tell you something that Chris and I did notice about a scene in that. In the book. Now, in the book, there's a scene where one of the mates is on the deck, and he freaks out, and he comes down to tell the captain he's on night watch. And he said, "I saw this creature, this tall, thin man in black in the mist. And I took out my knife, and I stabbed, and I stabbed, and I stabbed." So he obviously didn't kill Dracula, but he stabbed this Dracula creature in the mist. And many people overlook that. And that is, if Dracula had the power in the mist to avoid being stabbed on the ship, why couldn't he have done that in other times in the story? Is it because it's nighttime and he had all his powers, and during the daytime at the end of the novel, when the sun was going down, he didn't have his powers, he couldn't avoid the knife going in by Quincy Morris? So it's one of those teeny little 2-sentence things that you wonder, what is Bram telling us? Is that inconsistency, or is he doing that on purpose to say, you can't get me, you can't touch me?
Yeah. I was wondering about the Van Helsing character, like, because am I right in thinking that he has prior knowledge of vampirism or of Dracula himself? I can't recall. Is that something you guys are looking at exploring?
No, Chris has a really good answer for that, because we've touched on it. Chris, why don't you go ahead and say that?
Yeah, he does. And it's connected to his personal life. If you grab the novel Dracula's Bedlam, you'll see what happens in there.
Right. Okay.
Dracula's Bedlam and Voices of Dracula go and delve into that in the Stokerverse. But yeah, it's a personal thing. Now, I'll take you to a scene in the book on how we know that Dracula isn't taking Lucy because of a booty call or anything like that. Dracula knows the connection that Lucy has to Seward, and he knows Seward's connection to Van Helsing. When he starts to transform Lucy, he knows that Van Helsing's going to be called, and Van Helsing's going to recognize the signs of vampirism, because he does straight away. He knows exactly when he pulls down, he sees the little marks, he lets out a gasp. He knows exactly what it is.
Yeah, the trouble is he can't convince all the rest of the band of heroes. It takes half the book to do it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
So then we have a situation where Dracula knows that Van Helsing's hubris is going to lead Van Helsing to say, "I can save her." But Dracula knows that he can't. So whenever he fully transforms Lucy's in the crypt, Van Helsing, his only recourse is to go to the band of heroes and say, "See this woman that you loved? Well, she's now become this inhuman monster, undead monster, and she's taking children and doing God knows what. And the only way to save her is to go into the crypt, stake her through the heart, cut her head off, and shove garlic in the mouth. So in this essence, Van Helsing has to go to the men that loved Lucy the most and desecrate her memory, then ask them to desecrate her body. Dracula is thinking, they're going to think he's a crazy old man and walk away from him. And then Van Helsing's going to be on his own, which is essentially powerless. And this would be Dracula, one of Dracula's victories, because he's a vengeful bastard. But what actually happens is, because some of the band of heroes have already had adventures in the supernatural, they're not so quick to dismiss it. And no, I'm not going to elaborate on that one.
But it's the classic villain thinking they've got every angle covered, and it's the one thing that they just didn't think. They think, oh, no one's going to come up against me, but the one person that says enough.
Well, evil always, it doesn't realize the power of good. It doesn't realize the power of hope and love. And even whenever Lucy is transformed into this monstrous sort of creature, the men still love the memory of her. So they will do butchery, and it is, when you're killing a vampire, it's fucking butchery. And when they are doing that, it's okay. There's the love there, and then there's the hope, because you see the peace in Lucy's face, because she's been laid to rest, and her spirit then can go on to wherever. And Dracula is a theological book. There's a lot of theology in Bram Stoker's work that doesn't get explored.
There's a massive worship element to it, isn't there? It's worship me kind of element to it. Sorry, Dacre, you had your hand up there, mate.
Well, I wanted to address, just Dan brought up Van Helsing, and I just wanted to address it for a moment, that all the characters in the story are mergers of people that Bram knew and had knowledge of, either knew personally or had knowledge of through other people. And I just got to put this out there on the record for you guys and your listeners. Dr. Seward is about 90% Bram's eldest brother, Sir William Thornley Stoker, who was knighted for his medical knowledge, his contributions to medicine in Ireland, head of the Royal College of Surgeons, both physical doctoring as well as mental health doctoring. That's where Renfield comes from. That's a statement that the Stoker family is making about mental health in that day and age, and Bram wove that into the story masterfully. But also Van Helsing was somebody that Thornley Stoker knew, as Seward did in the story. When Thornley traveled to do his medical studies, I believe it was a guy, and I'm not the only one that believes it. It's based on a German Max Mueller, who was a doctor, but he was also big into superstition. But also think of this character. He was a lawyer, he was a doctor, he was a professor. He had incredible breadth of knowledge, and all those bits and pieces came together when he was trying to figure out what to do with Lucy and later Mina, and explain to the band of heroes, who are a great cross-section of society, how this vampire has come to our shores. How do we understand? How do we believe that a vampire could possibly be here? You must believe in things you know not to be true, which is a classic line in the story that Bram borrowed from Mark Twain, his neighbor. But that's the whole idea. Is as science is advancing in the Victorian era, Charles Darwin has just published Origin of the Species, and all these guys are beginning to believe more in science than they are in religion. Bram is saying, no, we've got to keep these things together, that the merger of all good things, we have to have faith in goodness, science, and religion at the same time. That's why Chris says it's a theological story. It was once explained to me in Dublin, Ireland, at the 100th anniversary of Bram's death, in the church, when the vicar said, Dacre, I'd like to proceed down the aisle with a copy of Dracula next to the Bible. And my son, who was with me, was a religion and English major at college. His dad, that's not a good idea. I said, it's okay, Parker, don't worry. And the priest said, don't be silly. They're both books about good and evil, where good wins out in the end.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So if you wouldn't mind, guys, just moving it back into the area of the your Zoop funded comic and everything. What is so? I'm staggered how much thought has gone into this. It's pretty
I'm
impressive.
kind of like, whoa, it's great.
Yeah, you've captured us there, guys. But what is there in a comic format that you think you can do beyond the novel, beyond the film, beyond the audio play? What sort of enticed you into that medium?
Well, I'll go first because it's really Chris's forte, but I can't draw to save my life. Bram actually was the founding member of the Dublin Painting and Sketching Club, and I said, okay, enough. Okay. It's time now to go into a medium that Bram was very comfortable in, theatrics and art. But also, let's be honest, nowadays, people aren't reading the novel Dracula as much as they are looking at comics, watching film, and it became very obvious that we can be very creative and touch a new audience in an artistic way. And that's when, after Chris's first foray into this with Dracula in Space, it was obvious that he's the guy to help do it. He's the one that found the different artists. He found Scratch Comics. And he's the one that actually said, guys, I know about, the Lamberton worm. I think we need to merge this together. So it allowed us to merge things in a way that it would be comfortable, easy, and entertaining for people to read. So Chris, you get to go next.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've had a particular fascination with comics for about 5 years now. And I love the medium because you can do anything you want in it. When you grab a good artist, you can do whatever you want. You can show whatever you want. You can display it. It's mass media as well, and affordable, so you can get it in the hands of everybody.
Mostly affordable, Chris.
Yeah,
mostly affordable. Yeah, I suppose I'm still looking at the era of comics, back 5 or 6 years ago, but yeah, I love the synergy between a writer and an artist. And I've been lucky that all the artists that I've been dealing with and all the various things that I've been working on have. You got
some crackers on this book, man. I've got to tell you that how did Shane hook you up with the artists on this book? Did he or?
Yes. So with Chris's work's great. I think it's that it gives a sort of like there's almost like a surrealism to the work in the first issue. The second issue, we're starting to deal with more real life events, more historical events. So Chris's work becomes a little bit more solid. We're not dealing with Dracula returning and all the forces of hell and all of that kind of stuff. So Chris has got a way of being able to sort of
there's real people talking. You mean that sort of scenario?
Yeah, it's real more people talking. There's more details. There's more historical details. Like we've been providing photographs of real events and all that kind of stuff, and then Chris is able to sort of bring that in now. So it's a lot more, shall we say, grounded in reality. A lot more. It's more solid. It's not the same surrealism. Matt's artwork, Matt's coloring's incredible. And
I worked with Matt a few years ago funny enough, on a vampire story, and he was outstanding. Yeah, really love him. He did me a scanners commission. Do you remember I showed you that, guys? The scanners.
Yeah.
Fucking hell, he's great. Scanners. Yeah, really good.
Amazing.
So and then Dave Hitchcock, obviously, he's fantastic with details. What Dacre and I do is we put a lot of occult details into the panels with Dave stuff. So whenever you read it the first time, you might not catch it. The second time, you might start to see things because the occult was very much with Bram as well, because he was a Freemason. He was involved in the occult. We don't know. We suspect that he was involved with the Order of Golden Dawn. So in a lot of our scripts, we put occult things in there, and with issue 2, Dave is actually doing a side strip which may reveal the real person behind Dracula. So not Vlad III. Dracula was not based solely on Vlad III, but a real person that Bram Stoker knew. And Bram Stoker said that Dracula was a true story. So Dave's doing that.
So you're going with the sort of the main story and a backup story again? Is that the plan?
Main story, backup story, and then a text-based story which brings in all our characters from the Stokerverse. So we've got Jekyll and Hyde, Frankenstein's creature. We've got a Stokerverse version of Sherlock Holmes, because Conan Doyle was a great friend of Bram Stoker. Conan Doyle was also a Freemason involved in the occult as well. So we've all of that. Those are the sort of the three main parts of the comic. And then you'll have Dacre's commentary there. You'll have little bits and pieces from myself, and also an intro from Tim Quinn, who you all know.
Yeah,
who was the editor of Marvel.
Did the
UK.
cartoons. Tim Quinn and Dickie Howett used to do the Doctor Who stuff and all that sort of thing, didn't they?
Yeah.
He's
so
quite a raconteur, isn't he, as well?
He is. He is. He's a legend in the comic book industry. So he really enjoyed Dracula issue 1, and it's nice to just get that little.
So how did you hook up with Shane? How did that come about? Shane at Scratch Comics, isn't it? Is the imprint?
Yes.
Yeah, well, Dacre and I wrote a strip whenever he was working with Scar Comics, and we did Dead by Dawn. So we wrote this sort of comic strip, which was about a rock band in the 80s, and they had a rather mysterious manager who he was kind of entrancing the lead singer, and the other band members decided to kill him, murder him, and then they remove the body and think that they're safe. The lead singer starts to see a mist come from under his door, and you know what's happening there. The inference is that the manager's actually Rasputin, because they try and kill him with poison, they shoot him, they stab him, and he's actually a vampire. And then there's vengeance is wreaked upon the rest of the band members. So we did that, and then whenever Shane created the Scratch imprint, he came to us and said, "Look, guys, I'd really like to do I'd like to do something in your Stokerverse." So yeah, we decided we would do something that ties in sort of the White Worm, Crumcreotch, and Dracula. So yeah, it's a great partnership.
Yeah, he's a nice guy. So, was the first one kickstarted and the second one's with Zoop, or were you with Zoop originally?
We were with Zoop, yeah. So Zoop for the 2 campaigns, right. And we found Zoop.
They were quite
really
new
good
at that point, weren't they?
Yeah, we found them really good. They're great at pushing comics, and they're 4 comics. Very comic specific and comics.
Yeah, I've just backed the Chaikin book as well. I mean, they're really shaking up the world of because it's not completely crowdfunding. They're a kind of pseudo publisher, aren't they? They do more than just being a crowdfunding platform.
Yeah, they're a distributor as well, as far as I know. Yeah. So that means that we can get the comics out in a timely manner to our fans and stuff. So it's great.
Yeah, go back and listen to the Jordan interview, because he was great, wasn't he, guys? Yeah,
great platform. Yeah.
So, Dacre, has comics been your jam previously? I know you're obviously a learned reader of Gothic novels, but have you dipped into comics over the years?
I have to admit, when you guys said, "All right, we're going to talk your favorite Dracula comic," I hadn't read many.
Right.
I grew up on Mad magazine.
Good man.
You guys,
we love Mad.
I mean, that was my satirical approach to life. I was like so into sport. I actually trained.
You were a pentathlon, weren't you? Yeah.
Yeah, I qualified for the '80 Olympics, and because the boycott didn't make it, and then became a coach. So I honestly didn't have much time for anything other than my fix of Mad magazine. But recently, just before I got involved in Chris, people come to me all the time for intros to books, afterwards, so on. Legendary Comics. Robert Napton came to me because I have been in close contact with the Lugosi estate. Lynn Lugosi is taken up from her father, who is Bela's son. Bela's father basically won the lawsuit to regain the intellectual property that Universal Films managed to wrestle away, or at least didn't acknowledge that there was any reason to pay the family anything for Bela's likeness and so on. So he won that back. And then the daughter took over, and Lynn and I have appeared on shows together. We talk frequently about, geez, what are you doing to protect the intellectual property and so on of your famous relative? So they were doing a legendary Dracula where in the graphic novel, all the Dracula scenes are Bela Lugosi. Right. And I thought that what a great idea. And so they asked me to write the afterword. And so that's my favorite one to date, because honestly, I haven't read too many others. I spend so much time when Chris sends me ideas, what we're going to do in the script, these are pencils, what do you think about this? Then they get colored. I mean, to me, it's all encompassing. Yeah. As well as I'm still writing novels with other folks, still developing other ideas. So Yeah, that's my favorite at the moment, and I'm proud to be in it. It was a great graphic novel, and really, I've got it in front of me, although you guys can't see. But El Gehring and Kerry Gamble did incredible artwork.
Kerry Gamble's the rules.
Love Kerry Gamble.
That is nice.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. It's
it is nice.
It's a good work. Yeah, and I love that sort of this darkness stuff. It's like David Hitchcock. Not that I don't like the coloring of Geary and Soph, but it's just just has that great Victorian vibe.
Nice to have that comparison, those two versions. Yeah.
You can always release a black and white version down the line for a few extra quid.
Yeah. Dan's always thinking of the money.
Those works.
What about you, Chris? Any favourite comics over the years? Vampire comics?
Yeah, well, I have to pay tribute to my old mentor, Pat Mills. Requiem Vampire Night. Requiem Vampire Night is a damn good.
I read that on Global Comics just yesterday. I reread it yesterday. Yeah,
it's
very amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
I think that's his best work. I think there's definitely his best work. I've mentioned the Batman Red Rain trilogy. I like that. I think that's the best of the Elseworlds stuff. I don't read an awful lot of vampire comics. I actually don't read a lot of horror. It always amazes people that I don't read a lot of horror or watch a lot of horror. But I have enjoyed 30 Days a Night, and 30 Days a Night's interesting because it's like Assault on Precinct 13 vampires.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's why it works so well. It's like the perfect environment for these vampires to exist for 30 days.
That synopsis alone, you just hear the synopsis.
It's a great pitch, isn't it?
It's
right.
It's just like that's just a win.
I think that's what works about 30 Days a Night, because it's so good. Now I've read some of the other sequels and stuff, but nothing has surpassed that original.
Yeah.
The speed of the vampires, the ferocity of them, the evil, like the sheer evil of them as well, which I adore. That it's not that they've got the whole, oh my god, I'm a vampire and I live forever, and oh, it's so bloody hard, it's so hard, I've got all this money and I don't know what to do. Fuck that. These things are coming at you at 90 miles an hour, tearing out your throat, playing football with your head and having a damn good time, right? And that's what sells the comic comic to me. So those would be the three, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And let me just say this. I've been to Alaska. Chris and I have chatted about this. I go up there for fly fishing, but in the summertime when it's daylight the whole time, with the exception of about 3 o'clock till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. But I've spoken to taxi drivers up there who pick me up at the airport and bring me to the place where the float plane takes me. He says, bloody awful in the wintertime. He said, and I mentioned my pastime with Bram Stoker. They go, oh, have you read 30 Days of Night? It's awesome. It's like so bloody scary because it's all freaking nighttime all the time, and it's dark and cold, and you never know. And they got real blood-sucking creatures up there as well. I mean, the bears, the moose, the wolves. You take a wrong step out at the nighttime to go out to the John. You have to do outdoors. So you could. It doesn't have to be a vampire. Danny Houston was so bloody scary with those teeth. It's unbelievable.
Amazing, isn't he? Yeah, he's great in that.
Yeah.
More of that soon, incidentally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're maybe talking a little bit more about that series on a future show. But in terms of like crafting this book, I was struck by something earlier that we were talking about, that obviously with Dracula only being a certain percentage of the novel, and a lot of it is reputation or the things that you don't see or people's descriptions of the great evil. So there's not so much sort of physical things, but comics are a very visual medium. So what were the challenges in terms of showing? Because it's not...
It's the least showy of that group of characters when you think about it. Werewolves are more showy, aren't they? Frankenstein's more showy. You're right, Vince.
Yeah, but you don't want to overplay your hand with Dracula, do you? So how do you find that balance in a comic book medium for that character?
Well, I mean, just like I said earlier, he exists mostly in the minds of others, and everybody already knows, what the classic Dracula looks like. What we try to do is disguise him, so that you're still guessing, where is he? It's the enemy that you don't see is scarier than the one you can actually see. And I was at a panel once at San Diego Comic-Con where someone said, what's scarier nowadays is being in a public market, and there could be a guy with a vest on that's going to blow everybody up. They all look like you, as opposed to the guy walking down the street with an AK-47, which is terrible in itself, but you can kind of run for cover or think you have a chance. So it's disguising Dracula in a way, blending him in with other people in the story, putting disguises. So you still, even though we all know that Dracula is out there, you really don't know when he's going to strike or how he's going to affect you, the reader, on behalf of the characters in the story.
So is there potential for like having a crowd scene and Dracula's in it, but you're not highlighting it? It's a difficult thing to do, isn't it? Because in comics, you kind of have to notify the reader in some ways.
Yeah,
oh, by the way, that one,
yeah.
You want to keep your eyes on that one. You can't really, you can't really do the hidden trick and just think, oh, I'm the only person that knows that Dracula is that person in the crowd. There are interesting challenges with this sort of medium, isn't it? That is very very visually in your face with a character who is hiding. Were there any particular points in like your stories or like finding those gaps in the lore that you could play with that were bigger challenges?
I'm going to let Chris tell you. He's going to balance an edge here between spoiler and not spoiler.
Yeah.
But Chris had a brilliant idea in the second one that I thought, a number of them, but one in particular to kind of keep the not just Dracula but somebody else sort of hidden in plain sight.
Yeah. There's in the main strip. So the first thing is in the main strip of issue 2, you have, and this is interesting, you have a callback to the side strip. So I would almost say read the 2 strips first and then read the first one again, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. God, I have to be so cryptic. It sounds like I'm talking bollocks when I do that, but do that. But it's the figure that we believe that Dracula was based on, a very real person, and it has ties to the devil himself. Now, whenever we talk about difficulties of portraying stuff, trying to portray Dracula's descent in the first issue to these Lovecraftian gods and the various shapes and changes and chrysalises that the Lovecraftian gods come out of was very challenging, because again, they're metaphors. They're metaphors for spirituality and all sorts of things there. You'll actually see a metaphor to Shiva in there as well.
Okay.
The thing about Dracula is that there's reasons for everything in the lore, and trying to show that in the comics is very difficult. For example, do you know why Dracula is afraid of the crucifix? Why are vampires afraid of the crucifix? Okay, so no one was crucified.
That was a complete blank. Then
no. Yeah.
So the most famous thing that the vampires are afraid of, and most people don't understand this.
Yeah.
The crucifix isn't a depiction of a Roman murder. The crucifix is a depiction of the equinox of the sun. Okay, no Roman was ever crucified on a T-shaped cross. Christ was crucified on that cross, and what happens when Christ dies? The sun disappears. The death of the solar god, the equinox. Okay, that's the reason why Dracula's afraid of the cross. Why are vampires allergic to silver?
Oh, I feel like I'm in the worst pub quiz in the world because I'm just failing on everything.
So, Judas Iscariot betrayed Christ for 30 pieces of silver. Okay,
yeah.
So there's all these reasons why, and Dacre and I are sort of teasing these out and bringing these out in various characters, and in comic books it's hard because these are ideas.
Yeah.
How do you show that idea without it becoming stupid and hammy, and somebody produces a cross and then somebody says, and the vampire retreats? The very serious nature of the power of the sun, when it comes to life itself, because the sun is life-giving. The power of the sun when it comes to ancient religion and modern religion. Trying to portray all of that so that there's a depth and a layer to the things that we're doing. I mean, the concept of the white worm, Crom Creoch, essentially that's where Halloween comes from in Ireland. Samhain is the worship of Crom Creoch, the white worm. So blood would have been spilled, there would have been sacrifice and all sorts of things that would have happened on Halloween to satiate Crom Creoch, who was the fertility god. You actually see Crom Creoch and Slain, and Pat Slain, very interestingly. He and I had a conversation about that once. But that's, so we've got the white worm, we've got all of this historical context that Bram would have known whenever he injected this into the story. Dacre and I have got to get this in a 22-page paint strip.
That's the thing, it's a jigsaw, isn't it?
Yeah,
there's a lot, and we want to bring that depth in. But you'll see an issue too, that what the white worm has done with Dracula. When Dracula returns, trying not to spoil it for people who haven't read issue 1, but the white worm's essential to Dracula's resurrection. And then you'll see that he has given Dracula a few more extra abilities, which again we had to portray in a certain way, and do that in 3 panels. You very, very tight for panels.
Yes, it's nightmare, isn't it? Yeah.
This kind of rich knowledge that we have that we're bringing to the table, and I have to pay tribute to the artists, because I sit with them and go, okay, this is it. These are the images.
Both pros, man. They look super pro level.
That's great.
Could easily be an image book. We were saying that. It's so good.
Yeah,
it's great. Yeah. And I'm very grateful for it. Dacre and I are very grateful for the talents that are coming our way in the Stokerverse, because it's an affirmation of what we're doing. We started this, I think, 2 years ago. I think we started this 2 years ago. And every artist that we've worked with on these books, it's just been an incredible process.
Yeah,
because we've got a writer writes a script. You guys know this. A writer writes a script, and you have an image in your head, and that's your image. You take it to an artist will read the script, have their image, and then there's this kind of synthesis that happens.
You got to be prepared for it to be slightly different as well.
It's got to be a collaboration, absolute collaboration. And what you get, if you get some real professionals, I'm lucky in all our projects to be working with Glenn Fabry and stuff, but when you get professionals, they say, okay, well, what about this angle? Or trying it from this perspective, or trying it from this, and you listen to that. And if you're listening to this and you're a comic book writer and you're wondering, you're starting out, always listen to your artists, because they'll give you the perspective on panels, which will make your work shine.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because artists wouldn't tell a writer how to write. But, so a writer should...
They better fucking not, Vince.
We'll talk about this off air.
Some artists will not tell a writer how to write. And to be honest, I had, when I started out my career, and I was very lucky because I started out my career with Pat Mills by my side. And you couldn't get a better writer.
No.
What was that? What did you work on with him?
So we started. I started by writing reviews of 2000 AD, which I had never read before, and that was 5 years ago. And then Pat saw the reviews, liked that, rang me up on Skype, started a whole conversation, and I proofread his
Space Walk.
Be pure, be vigilant.
Oh, cool.
Be pure, be vigilant.
Were you a beta reader on that then? Were you? Or?
I was a beta reader on that.
Yeah, me too, man.
It was great. It was a great book.
Yeah.
And then kind of moving forward, then Pat was like, you can write. I was like, why didn't you write, Judge Dredd story? Why didn't you write? So, I started doing that in various fanzines, and then Pat said to me, "Would you want to write Slain?" So what I did was I took Slain and I took another one of my favorite characters of his, Finn. And I basically said Finn was an incarnation of Slain. And Pat went, yeah, okay. And we got it out, and people liked it. And, Pat doesn't generally allow you to write his characters. But he did like, and he kept pushing me. It was constantly, and it was a great partnership. And then I started working with guys like William Shatner and all that kind of stuff. So that was fun. That was fun too.
Yeah.
But I think you've got to listen. You've got to listen to the artist essentially. Whenever you're writing a comic strip, or you're in the process of editing a comic strip as well.
Yeah, I get you. So here's a question, Dacre, for you, and then Chris as well. So the day comes where Dracula approaches you, and he says, "Dacre, I'm going to bite you on the neck," and from that, you can be immortal, you can fly. You get loads of, you're probably both married, but you can get loads of women, right? Do you say yes?
Absolutely.
Yes.
No question.
Me too.
I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in. I just think it's too cool. All those powers, not just the women or the flying. I'm in. It's worth a try. What the hell?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah. Chris?
No.
No.
And I'll tell you why. Okay, being allergic to garlic, not being able to wear silver.
Marilyn Monroe, though, Chris. Come on. It wouldn't dissuade me. It's not a fun lifestyle.
No.
She's great, isn't she? Yeah, she's great.
Very nice.
So no, I wouldn't be tempted at all.
Okay.
I think that there's an immortal life is not for the human spirit.
Okay.
Right.
Wow.
Okay.
What a poetic.
That's a nice end
to finish off.
Yeah.
Listen,
And I will
guys,
say,
he's only saying this because he is already a vampire.
oh yeah, that's true. His room looks
He
pretty
is
dark compared to the rest of us.
It is. He doesn't come out at daytime. He's pulling a hoax on all of you.
This isn't a video, is it?
I
know it took him a while to turn his video on. This is some kind of recording.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that now.
Yeah. It's because he wasn't showing up on it. That's why it wasn't.
Got Vampire the Masquerade going on. Like a double bluff.
But pardon the pun, but this has been a bloody
brilliant.
fascinating conversation. Thank you very much, gents. And obviously the Stokerverse is massive, wide, never growing, and obviously this book is on its way. So if people want to find out more and follow you guys, etc., where can they find you and this brilliant Dracula book?
Well, Chris has just finished creating the beginnings of our Stokerverse.com website. And then both of us are on Facebook. We got a Stokerverse page there, as well as our personal pages on Facebook. I've got a website, BramStokerEstate.com, because there's lots of information about Bram and myself there, as well as some of the cool products. And then my personal page, DacreStoker.com. And Chris, you can probably tell them where to find you as well, but I think I've given the most of the list.
Yeah. So my other stuff you'll find in www.dark-legacies.com. So it's probably well known that I have a sci-fi franchise with Claudia Christian.
Oh yeah, we reviewed that book as well, Chris.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I liked it, man. Yeah. I'll back the
that's
second
all right.
one. Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much. That's great. So like you'll see all my Terminator work and Doctor Who work and stuff in there too. So.
Do let us know when the book 2, the Dracula the White Worm, is on Zoop, and we'll let our listeners know on the pod.
It's on there now. It's available now, guys. Yeah. So get everybody go out and pledge so that you can see the continuation of this story.
Where can they get issue 1 if they haven't already got it?
It's on Zip as well. So if you go now, you'll get catch up. You'll get catch up issue 1 and 2, and you can do that digitally or physically.
And then didn't Shane tell us Scratch Comics website? You can still get Dracula Return #1 there too, I think.
You can get it from the Scratch Comics website as well. Yeah.
Awesome. So many places to go.
Are you doing any sort of personal appearances, guys? And we have listeners from the States as well, Dacre. So are you doing any sort of personal appearances at conventions or?
I'm actually headed in about an hour to Dublin, Ireland.
Oh wow! Okay.
Bram Stoker Festival
wow.
In Dublin over Halloween weekend. I'm doing some workshops there where I'm talking all about dissecting Dracula. And then I head over to Transylvania for a film festival about documentaries, and that takes me up. I mean, I've already been in New Orleans doing events, and St. Louis. So those are sort of American events that have already passed, and then everything calms down the middle of the year, and then it goes crazy again. April, May, and June, I lead tours to actually Whitby. I'll be doing that in May. There's a good chance I'll be in Derby also in May for the 100th anniversary of the first showing of Dracula on stage. We're trying to make that happen. And then I also lead another group over to Transylvania in June. And those things are on my Facebook pages as well.
Awesome.
Brilliant.
What about you, Chris? Do you do cons or anything like that? Do you table with?
I don't really. Maybe I should start, but I don't really.
Well, the sunlight might burn you to a crisp. So,
the other hint. That's the problem.
Thank you very much, guys. This has been amazing.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time, your interest, guys. Have a spooky Halloween season.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, guys.
All right, take care.
And welcome back. Wow.
Who'd have thought we'd have got a relation to Bram Stoker on the show? How cool was that?
When we decided to do this show all those years ago, and even the dark period when it became nothing but knob jokes. Little did I know, it's kind of ongoing, but little did I know that, we would have moments of true informative nature.
And we had a meeting of minds around Carrie Munro, which I thought was marvellous.
Oh, yeah, there was that as well. And one of our guests was a vampire. So there you go. That's what we did.
Clearly he's a vampire. He's denying it.
Yeah.
We know he is.
But thank you to Dacre and Chris for joining us. And that was to learn so much about this character that you can tell. I mean, when I was enraptured. I don't know what you got. And I was just thinking, there's all of this wealth that so many comic book writers have just ignored.
Yeah,
I think it shows the validity of knowing your subject.
Yeah,
totally. You're going to write about it.
Yeah.
But there's stuff there that I was like, I kind of thought I knew that, and I absolutely don't.
No,
I fucking have a clue.
Yeah,
and I'm not professing myself some kind of expert on.
Every week we always say we know nothing.
Like I'm gonna make myself maybe sound ignorant, but I didn't realise Bram was short for Abraham. That's how little I know about.
I didn't realise where he'd moved about to and all that sort of thing as well. Yeah, some interesting stuff there.
So
where is Whitby? Where is Whitby?
Oh, Tony, why have you asked us that now? Like we've just had like an hour of us not knowing anything, and you've just asked us a basic geography question, and we can't even do that.
I'm putting it into Google Maps. I should know. It's north somewhere, isn't it? I don't know.
Anything north of the Thames is north for me.
North Yorkshire. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. So a bit of geography knowledge for you. And we hope you enjoyed that, and maybe think a little more about the Dracula that you read in your comics now. Sometimes when you read a real basic, and let's face it, there have been some basic representations of that character. You'll recognise them a little bit more and just think, no, this is the way you should do it. So, and it was just nice to focus on like a big villain, especially of horror, So
I've got Dracula lined up to watch, the Coppola version.
Yeah,
and I'm going to be paying
attention.
That
for so many years.
Yeah. I've dug it out to watch a couple of films on Halloween. That's one of them. I'm looking forward to the bit where he escapes, because I cannot remember how it is done in that expressed in that film. It's such
an interest. I've got such a sort of almost not love hate, but an up and down relationship with that film, because it's like it's both too arty for me and yet really aesthetically amazing in the way it's.
I do love Gary Oldman. I really do love him as an actor. I think he's because he's like the only leading male actor to have won an Oscar who didn't have an agent employed to promote him to win an Oscar.
Wow. Okay, that says a lot.
Yeah, which I love that fact.
Yeah.
So
I'm trying to find how do you get a Dracula's castle? The immortal superhuman.
I might email Gary Oldman and say, "Do you know?" But you fucking don't.
Yeah. Just did it.
Just see him.
One of our friends has just worked Coppola. I might get him to email him.
yeah. How did Jonathan Harker escape?
Yeah.
Oh, Keanu Reeves.
Next time we're in a room with Coppola, we'll go, here, wanker, come here.
Yeah.
Can you do your best fake Cockney accent?
What like Keanu Reeves did in that movie?
Yeah, and it's blooming. I can't even do it bad enough.
He just watched
blooming castle and the bloody thing.
You just sound like from a 1970s sitcom.
Yeah, I can't do it.
What are you doing in this blooming castle? Why did I turn into Uncle Albert from Only Fools and Horses? Right, okay.
That was an impression of Uncle Albert. Yeah. You moved your head.
What was that, Dracula? Anyway,
classic character.
Oh dear. But anyway,
we're mucking about too much because we can see each other.
Yeah, I know, and we are loving it. But speaking of things we love, we got any shout outs this week, gents?
I have.
I do.
So I don't know if you heard of this one. DUI 3 is an anthology by our community, edited by fucking hell. They're gone now. Edited by our buddy Eamon Clark, with some excellent work
What was that,
people.
Tony? I
What was
didn't
that?
pick
You
up
know,
any...
the motorbikes.
No.
I can't hear any
Oh.
of that, so it just sounded
You
like...
just got really annoyed and went, fucking hell.
Oh no, there was like ring,
No, I didn't.
ring.
Yeah, no, I didn't hear that.
No, we didn't hear any of that.
Like a
So,
crazy frog.
so
Oh,
when you were
okay.
talking about the editor, you got irrationally angry for so.
I did. He made me angry. No, he didn't. It was some stupid twat on a motorbike. But yeah, well done, Eamon. Well done, everyone, for joining in on it. And even we're in it. It raises money for Mind, a mental health charity.
It's
Do
a bloody
something good.
lovely printed copy.
Ain't it great? Yeah.
Yeah,
Do
it
something
is.
good. Go to duicomic.bigcartel.com and buy a copy.
Yeah.
Or at least fucking retweet it or something. Yeah. That means
Yeah.
fuck all.
Yeah.
Graphic Gospel #2 is out and almost sold out. Seriously not safe for work. But
I've got that right here.
Raise a smile. Thank you, mate.
Raise
Cheers.
his camera.
Tributepress.co.uk. Happy birthday for Falp. It was his birthday yesterday.
Happy birthday, Carl.
Hey, he's 17 now, isn't
Yeah, just almost legal. Inferno, The World Dies Screaming is the new Doctor Who comics project from our buddies at Cutaway Comics. For me, these guys are becoming 4 comics what Big Finish do for audio.
Oh, great.
he? Wow.
I think
It's
they're
high
really
praise.
putting out a lot of books. This is written by Gary Russell with art by the legend that is John Ridgway. Speaking of Swamp Thing, he did the first few issues of Hellblazer, didn't he? Go back it on Kickstarter. It's well worth it. And now that we're into the sort of final third of October, it's worth just shouting out everyone in the Slack who's doing Inktober. Every morning I get up. You're doing, was it Robtober?
Robtober, yeah. Fucking.
Robtober.
I'll tell you
I've
what.
never had to Google so many fucking characters. I don't know who the fuck they are.
Right, two things. Dan's Robtober's amazing. It's a Rob Liefeld
thank you.
characters and stuff, and it's always a joy to see it. Your version of Glory made me feel things.
Oh.
And the other one that blew my mind was that character from Captain America, the Rob Liefeld.
Yeah.
And you posted up the cover that character came from. Once again, irrationally angry. I just.
I was as irrationally angry as that character I sent you the picture of from the cover, who looks like he's doing his shit while splitting his uniform.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
There's a character. It's one of the Extreme Studios. Is that his studio? Done like that.
Yeah.
Heroes Reborn, and he's done with. It's Ricky Barnes, who's like the girl Bucky.
Yeah.
He's sort of jumping forward in the bottom of the cover. There's a character on the left who I don't know who that is.
That's Falcon, I think.
That character I consider as Falcon, and then on the right it's got Cap, and they're kind of maniacally grinning. And I tried to just sort of hand that up.
Yeah.
On one I did.
Yeah.
Have you tagged him into any of them?
I've just used like the hashtag Rob Liefeld. I've not actually added him.
Okay.
In there.
I
I might be an
maybe.
absolute C&T and then do like at the end of it do a big long thread on Twitter and then tag him in.
Yeah, do
cool.
that. Do that.
Yeah.
We want to see the response.
And I got a final one. I just signed up for Global Comics.
Yes.
Hey.
$9.99 a month. The Image are on there now as well. Boom.
Oh wow, nice.
People are going to be talking about in a minute. Avery Hiller on there. A person we just spoke about. Mills Verse is on there. There's so much on there. I've already in less than 24 hours got my money back by about 10.
That's great. I've got to say I've not read fucking Vampire Night, and I really want to.
Really
If
good,
it says
yeah.
that's on there, I think that might be the arm up the back.
Crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it's good stuff. So they're my one, guys.
Nice. Dan, you got one?
Yes, I do. My first one, you didn't mention this, I think, Tony. If I did, I must have had some kind of brain meltdown. Edison Neo,
No.
no brainer. Issue 1 to 5.
That covers
Solo comics.
class, man.
He's got the orangutan
Landing page. Yeah.
character.
Yeah.
Boom, slam dunking a ball into a net. Absolutely fantastic. So go save the. You know when you do the Kickstarter and you can like, tell me when this launches.
Yeah.
You can do that.
Edison, I know you're a listener, Edison. But you're completely unaware of the amount of times on our WhatsApp that we'll send a picture
Edison
to one another
Neo's
going, why the fuck is he not being hired by a massive...
Now, you sent that Berserk picture on, but I'd already seen it and I was like, this is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
This is fucking amazing.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how far you've got into that, T, but I'll tell you what, if you've got through the first...
I need to get back to it, man. I know you did you gift me it? I can't remember.
Only
but
the
you said,
first volume of the small volume, but honestly, if you get through the first couple of books and it finds its feet, you're just in. It's so compelling. It's amazing.
Yeah.
We've got
a shout out to one of the things I did read on Global Comics is I think it's called Vampire State Building. Is that the name of it?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that's
I've been
by
intrigued.
Charlie Adlard. It's only 3 issues. Took about an issue and a half to get going, and then it fucking takes off.
Really?
And it's nice to see his art in colour. Yeah.
It's kind of got like New York skyline with the silhouette of the Empire State Building with the Empire's
just the
face
best fucking name. As soon as I heard that name, I thought that's genius.
Well, what happens is, I'll tell you the pitch for it. Empire State Building. Some people are up there saying goodbye to their friend who's going to join the army. Everyone gets turned in the building but them.
Nice.
Yeah. How do you cope with that? So they have to find a way to contain the Empire State Building and let these people who survive escape. It's great. They come up with some interesting ideas.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice one. We've got Underground Kingdom Comics presents the UK.
This could do with a little help, couldn't it?
Yeah, we've got about 6 days when you hear this, and we're shy about 300 quid to bump it over the line. It's absolutely like a wealth of talent in this one.
Forky and Falpy, they're in it.
Yes, I very much recommend checking that out. We've got the Viz quiz. We've had that running for a while now. Got a couple of entries in. I just want to give you the last chance for you to get your answers in for that quiz. And it was, what are the qualifications of the scientist striker for Fulchester FC, which you'll find in the Billy the Fish strip.
Yeah.
Nice.
We've got some great prizes for that as well.
Yeah.
Some basic Googling will give you that answer. If you're struggling with that. So do check that out and get those answers in to the email or us on socials. What's the email again, chaps?
awesomecomicspod@gmail.com.
That's the one. Boom.
There
and obviously DUI3 by that.
Yeah. So there you go. Loads of brilliant stuff to check out already. And we haven't even got onto our recommendations. But before we do, we are getting a little bit eerie, as always. And
this is our second to last eerie, isn't it?
This
We're doing
is
one
the,
next week.
this is the second to last eerie. The eerie archives. Some of you have probably already got print versions. Many of you might have bought the humble bundles, which were ridiculous value. Thousands of pages of strips, and we've decided to pick out just a strip that we've read, because we've been enjoying going back through these old volumes, and to talk about a particular highlight. To talk about Tony's holding up a Star-Lord toy gun that he has.
Yeah, it's a Nerf gun, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, it's a Nerf one. What's this? Oh shit, it's not working. What's this?
Oh,
how cool is that?
If only we could hear the noise, but the gun actually made some sort of movement as if it was opening up. And
the housing on the top and bottom.
Oh, that's cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
Me and my son got one each. We fire them at each other.
Yeah.
They're good.
Yeah, it makes
Don't
Tony feel more like a man. So so the eerie archives. We're picking out strips every time. Thousands of pages. Amazing creators. Too numerous to list them off. And you would have thought that with all of this choice, we'd never pick the same one. Well,
how the fuck did you two manage this again?
A couple of weeks ago, I picked a tale that Dan had already spoken about on the show before. I didn't fucking realise at the time. It was a real mind blank moment. This week, because of Dracula, etc. We thought, maybe if we can find one, let's find a vampire tale, and certainly Dan picked out a vampire one, and I was like, I know exactly what tale I'm going to be looking at. Tony seems to have some sort of a bat signal style butt plug in his hand, and Dan has put on Bret Hart like shades, as if he's some sort of hacker. The show's going off the rails, but I'm going to keep going.
But yeah, we kind of, I scanned through, because last week's a bit annoying. I did a vampire story.
Is he going to talk with those on?
Yeah, yes.
Have you had sex with those glasses on ever?
No, sadly not. It's on the list.
Okay.
Get that.
Yeah.
On the checkbox. Yeah, so we kind of, I did a bloody vampire one last week. Right, we're going to do vampirism and Dracula this episode. So let's scan through.
We did our classic decide a couple of days before the episode. So
yeah. I found this, the first one I come across as I was flicking through.
Why don't you two do yours first then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we picked the same fucking
one. It's called First Blood. And
art by Eugene Colan. Script by Archie Goodwin.
The legendary Return to Eugene. I wonder if he was known throughout as Eugene and Gene elsewhere.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Possibly.
The sun's light rays shrivel and die, like dark tentacles lengthening. Shadows of tombstones creep and crawl across the cemetery earth. And the night's silent rain begins. Silent, save for the grating sound of stone scraping stone from within the confines of the mausoleum.
He's still got those glasses on, folks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get in character.
Vince is holding up a rubber
This
brain.
is a story where a chap's been bitten, isn't he, Vince, by a vampire?
Yes.
And this is his first night. He's risen from the grave. And he's quite a happy chap when he first
He's a very, very happy chap. But dialing back into something we were talking about earlier about like the female vampires always being femme fatales and the gentleman not necessarily so. This guy looks like someone. He's greengrocer. No offense to greengrocers or anyone like that, but you know, if you think of a 1940s greengrocer, you know, this guy. I mean, his hair's a mess as well.
He's got the kind of the side tufts of hair, kind of like Wolverine, but bald on top.
He's
So
even got goofy fangs as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's got the goofy fangs.
Even though the story is pretty much straight up, it's his first night. He wakes up and he realizes that was it the night before he was turned down, like he was just taking a stroll.
Yeah.
And
he's attacked and turned into a vampire.
An unknown assailant turned him into a.
He comes out the tomb and he's essentially like, "This is great. This is absolutely fucking great. I'm a vampire. I've got super strength. I've got power more than I can dream of." And
he turns into a bat.
Into the night, as a bat, looking for his first victim. He's got no moral compunction about this. He's just like,
good. It's good
fuck
to
it. Let's go. Let's do vampirism.
Yep. He tries to attack someone, but is warded off by their cross. And then he heads for another house that basically is the house belonging to someone that he loves, his love.
Yeah.
So
he got attacked on his way to go and see his girlfriend, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He is punching so far above his weight, it's untrue.
Absolutely. He is. It's not even a TKO. It's a one-punch knockout. Yeah.
He must have some absolute riz on him to.
Probably got a few quid, Nate. Earned a load of money from being a greengrocer.
Yeah. So with time running out, he decides he sort of does he stalks the lady, and attacks her. Wants to drink her blood. He wants to turn her as well, doesn't he, Dan? I think I can't.
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, look, me and her can be. I'm going to lock this down. I'm going to turn her into a vampire. She's going to be mine forever."
But lo and behold, here comes the eerie twist. She is not alive when he goes to suck her blood. There's nothing there because she was the vampire that turned him. And he realizes this too late as the sun begins to come up. And I think I'm not sure how clear it is. Does he die at the end?
He does, yeah. I think he dies, but I'm not sure if his girlfriend does.
It looks like she's just
F's off.
Yeah, she's so basically as he's burning to death, his girlfriend's just having a go at him as well, going, "You fucking idiot."
No, we've got like a little glimpse into that relationship.
Yeah.
But like, if you're going to turn the loved one into a vampire, and the idea that you're going to join me in a vampire life, you wouldn't just leave them alone in the mausoleum to come back and not know what the fuck's going on.
Goodwin's words put it perfectly. Peter Grimes sinks weakly to the ground, unable to run or flee, unable to avoid the first searing rays of the sun, unable to do more than scream as Lenore's angry words scorch him with the same impact as the destroying sunlight. So that's when people go, "Oh, that's a burn," it literally is in this. That's a good play on words. Really
I'll be like, "So what? You when we're vampire couple, you're gonna have a go at me for all eternity?" Yeah, okay. Bring the sun on.
I definitely wouldn't bring my wife back. Yeah. She wouldn't be my fucking millionth choice. To be fair.
Yeah. And of course we've got the classic sign off. What was the name of the guy from Eerie?
The bloke.
Uncle Eerie.
Is it Uncle Eerie?
Yeah.
Dan, do you want to read off the sign off?
Yes. He says, "That's what Grimes gets for making a surprise visit in the first place." But then I'm sure it's beginning to dawn on him.
Yeah, so it's quite a good strip, this.
Yeah,
good.
Quite fun.
And also, like, seeing Gene Colan's artwork, as we mentioned before, seeing these artists that you know, so more
famous Dracula artist as well,
a more formulaic sort of panel sort of style in the bigger publishers, really go to town with panel structure, ink wash, the black and white colours and everything. And it's there. I mean, there is absolutely no conformity to this tale. Like there is not one regular panel, is there, Dan? It's sort of all angular, hand drawn. Beautiful stuff.
All the stuff, the stories in this are generally just like that. They're absolutely great.
Yeah. So that was mine and Dan's.
Yeah,
nice.
double teamed on that one.
Oh, well.
Shall I do mine?
Go for
so
it.
Yes.
Mine's from Eerie 36, issue 36 in volume 7. It's called Oh Brother by Steve Skeets, the writer, and Dave Cockrum, the brilliant Dave Cockrum, the X-Men artist as we and Legion of Superheroes, etc. So it's got a prologue, this one. So it's got 2 pages, and then we get into the main story. So the prologue is in Manhattan, present day, 1970s, 1980s. An alien ship hovers ahead, and people begin to panic. And a ladder comes down, and 2 humanoid male creatures with tentacles, a single eyeball thing, carrying blasters, climb down. The humans, including 2 cops who are there, uniformed cops, can't make out their strange language, and the cops shoot them and kill them. Okay, so that's the 2-page intro prologue to it. And then Uncleary appears in a space helmet. I like it when they dress them up in different stupid costumes just to fit in. And he says, now we're going to travel back and see what brought these aliens here. And they're called Gore and Ganar, of course they are. And they're a pair of scientists, and they're in prehistoric times. But they're approached by a dinosaur, kind of like a weird-looking, vicious dinosaur thing, which they kill. And then, of course, then you realise, because one of them says to the other, "You fucking idiot. What have you done? You've killed an animal from the past. Let's go to the future and see what's changed." Of course, they go to the future and it's modern day Manhattan. It's our life now. And that's why they're killed. So they're actually... So it's that sort of clever time travel twist. And Uncleary says, "And while you're mulling that one over, gentle spawn of Simeon, remember the dinosaur you shoot may be your mother." Not quite sure if that makes sense, Uncleary, but that's what he says. But it's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And it's one of those longer ones. It's like about 8 pages.
Okay.
It strings it out. So, I like that time travel one. And I didn't see that coming.
No. That's a bit of a twist, because usually it's like we just did there, the first bit in one. So, I'm the vampire too.
Yeah. So sort of by killing that single dinosaur, it changed the whole of human history. We didn't evolve into one-eyed, tentacled men. We evolved into what humanoid men as we are now, sort of thing. So that's how it worked. So, classic Eerie. There you go.
Yeah, nice one.
Nice.
Cool. One more of them left. Got to bring out the big guns next week.
Yeah.
And it is so funny, so fun sort of reading these sort of tales. I thoroughly recommend it if you think it's not your thing, maybe think again, because there's some really inspirational stuff.
I'd say if you're a current writer looking for ideas, there's a lot in there.
Yeah.
I tell you.
There's so many, just pick one up and you could expand on what you're given there and make a whole kind of tale out of it.
Completely. And speaking of great stories, it's time to recommend some comics to you lovely people.
We're not going to recommend or talk about Big Game.
We're not.
No.
We do have one word to say about it. I promised it last week. We just got one word to describe how we feel about it. It doesn't have to be a huge word, but let's go around the table. Big Game issue 4.
I'm going to hyphen mine.
Oh, don't. You always try to get around it. What? Yeah. Go on.
Surprise sexy.
No, you can have one.
Sexy.
Go on. Yeah. Sexy. Dan?
Mine's just going to be whoa.
Mine is... It sounds dull, but great.
Yeah.
There's more to be said, but we
double-sized. Final issue's double-sized now.
Double-sized. It's got to be.
It's got to be. It's got to be. If you've been reading it, you understand why it has to be. So, yeah. Great title, that.
Cool.
Yeah. I think we did more of a kind of roundup when we hit the final issue.
Yeah.
Cool. Which is coming out mid-November.
I'd really recommend getting on that and reading up. So when that last issue drops, you can...
And he's purposely not doing any publicity on the series that follows because he doesn't want you to know.
Yeah.
Which I think is a class act. That is.
Yeah, it should be. Man, that's one of the things that seems to be lost is the showmanship.
Yeah.
Just like, you don't know what's happening in these stories. You don't know what's going to happen with these characters.
Yeah.
And it's all to play for.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's very interesting. As is our selection of books this week. Tony, you've got 2, but you and Dan are going to hold hands.
We're going to double team
and skip through the field of the recommendations.
Skip through the pages of this one. So I'll lead D-Man. So it's The Hard Switch by Owen D. Pomeroy. We're fans of Owen's work, actually. Previously, we've seen him. I've been reviewing his books since before the pod and everything, and Super nice guy. Published by Avery Hill. They kickstarted. They are absolutely storming Kickstarter, aren't they, at the moment, Avery Hill? I mean, I think it was up for $8,000 and made 44 grand.
Well, it's a good way to get out to the people who want to buy your books.
Yeah. And saying that, it is a lovely book, a lovely hardcover book.
The way this is put together, I cannot fault at all.
Yeah, I think they added the dust jacket, didn't they? After it made so much money. Yeah, it's full color hardback, somewhere between A5 and magazine size. It's a nice, interesting size. 99 pages of story. We know that Owen is high on design since Victory Point. I know we all collectively loved that book. That was great. So the premise it's based on a big idea, actually. So I like a book. You get this with a lot of hard sci-fi, don't you? It's based off an idea of an environment or something that's happened. And the hard switch is the moment. So the hard switch, which is the title, is the moment when this mineral called alkanite runs out. And this is the mineral that enables travel between star systems. So kind of
Spice melange.
Yeah, a bit like that, isn't it, actually? Yeah. And so unless something else is discovered, which looks unlikely, people are going to be stuck where they are now when this completely runs out. And that sounds okay if you're living in a place that's got, food and water and stuff like that. But if you're stuck on an asteroid, you're fucked, aren't you? Do you know what I mean? Time travel.
It's also like commerce and empires would be kind of ground to a halt, and you'd all kind of be cut off from one another.
Yeah. So there's kind of a Firefly thing where they're scavenging this mineral from ships they find, abandoned space stations, places on planets, and there's a black market for it. And so the crew are 2 females and a sentient octopus, along with this sort of, it looks a bit like a diplocate, like a dinosaur child, but a sentient dinosaur child that they find on one of the planets. And they're hoping that by traveling through the galaxy, they're going to scavenge enough of this alkanite to eventually allow them to keep living. But they know time's sort of limited now. And it's not a safe venture, as you can imagine. Wherever they are, there tends to be other people, other creatures, other units under other mafias, as it were, sort of trying to beat them to the punch, trying to get it. And it eventually comes into a conflict with this collector guy who has a private army on a planet. I'm going to say I think it's the first of a series because it's got a sort of a cliffhanger, isn't it, Dan? It's got like a bit where he goes, I can't say what the ending is, but I kind of think that it's intended to be more
relatively open, like that there could be more.
Yeah.
So
I guess it's done so well. I guess it's likely that there will be. It's got pull quotes from Tilly Walden, Alex de Campi, and Jeff Lemire. I feel that I've got good and bad. I'm a bit mixed on my feelings around this. I'll be honest with you. I think Owen is a great draftsman when it comes to spaceships, asteroid fields, space stations, architecture. There's a sort of desert planet with a sort of Tatooine-esque village in it and stuff like that. So that's all great. And there's some definite Mobius vibes here, I have to say. I kind of think that he's read something. There's a sort of Inkle style Mobius kind of feel to it. The coloring's not as bright. In fact, I found the coloring a little bit muddy on occasions, but I think he could really really turn up the coloring. And there's some action pieces in it. There's a couple of stylistic, I'm going to call them tactics, that fell a little flat for me in the dialogue and especially the conversation, the acting artistically. So the facial acting in a character in a comic artistically affects how we read the balloons and the emotions. They can tell whether you're sad or you're angry or you're excited or you're envious or unhinged or whatever you're going to do. And collaboratively hand in hand with that facial acting comes the lettering. And whether it's bolded out, whether it's sized, whether it's special effects, whether it's just effects on the lettering and stuff like that. And I find that those two in hand add to the dramatic nature of a comic. And I think the way that artistically and tactically Owen has gone with these very simplistic faces, which are often just 2 dots and a line, they don't facially act enough. Where in Victory Point, it was almost like a single person wandering around this beautifully drawn environment. In this, a lot of it is talking heads. And I feel like there's almost a blandness to the lettering, which again, I know we had this with the blindness of Billy Scott, is almost too small I feel, for the page a little bit. So I think maybe for a second print or something like that, maybe go with something
Boost it up a little bit.
a bit bigger on it. Yeah. He uses a font that is somewhere between maybe something like Calibri and almost like a handwriting font, but a spaced one. It's not joined up handwriting.
It's a slight italicization on it.
That's a good way of putting it, man. Yeah.
Slightly angled.
Yeah. And the balloons are sort of slightly oversized in a way that you often, and sort of slightly squarer in a way that you often see with BD work.
Yeah.
And I think there's too much air in the balloons and a lack of dynamism to the lettering, put it that way.
Because there's no kind of hard line with the balloons. So where you'd get like on some comics the white with a hard black line. There's no black line. It's just like the white balloon.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I didn't notice that, man. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. And I think there needs to be more energy to the lettering and more energy to the acting. Everything else is set up lovely. It's like beautiful situations and places they find themselves into.
I was going to say, there's some elements of this comic that work really well for me. There's some elements where it kind of, you want the energy. Where in, was it Victory Point? The energy of kind of like this kind of, it's almost like a dreamlike thing of this girl going around and rediscovering this place where she grew up. And there's like a serene calmness as you kind of take it all in. When you get the moments in this where there's action sequences and they're being strafed by ships, I'm not getting it.
You're not feeling
it? No, it's just really just... I'm not sure if the art style works especially well in those sequences for me.
Okay. Yeah.
It just feels
there's one which he uses lots of little panels around a central image of the girl almost posing, isn't there? You know, with a gun. Yeah, I'm not sure about that one. I think he's going for something that he doesn't quite pull off.
Yeah, I mean,
if God bless him, go for it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Fair play.
Yeah.
If I was kind of like looking for like a kind of a manga interpretation, say, of like a girl on a deck of a ship firing a laser pistol at a ship strafing her, it'd be fucking shit all over the place, like Daniel Warrior Johnson style. This one's very much kind of like an RT style representation of it.
Yes, like,
it's not for me.
Yeah, I mean, saying that, it sold like hotcakes.
Yeah. I mean, it's for someone.
Well done. Yeah, and I will continue to buy anything by Owen. I just think that we were so we so loved that sort of bleak silence and that loneliness that appeared in Victory Point that this doesn't quite hit it for me.
Yeah, maybe I came with pre-expectations of it being a similar kind of experience. I don't know how.
Yeah, because the cover kind of speaks to them stuck on a spot. They're like kind of stuck somewhere lonely. Yeah. Sort of thing about it. It's not an action image, is it? But So if you fancy it, if you like the work of Owen's, he's an amazing draftsman.
Totally.
I think there's some lettering issues there, and maybe it's just my old eyes, but maybe a redo on the lettering and repass on it would be better. But
there's that big Starfield game, Vince, that's doing the numbers.
Yes.
At the moment, I think this would appeal to that crowd quite a lot.
Oh, okay.
That would definitely. I mean, it seems almost as fortuitous it's come out at the same time as that's massive, because I definitely feel like there could be a crossover with the two.
Real.
Interesting.
Cool. That's our first one. Anyway,
Nice.
Vincenzo, over to you, mate.
I'm going to jump on board with another issue 1. This time it's an Image comic written by Ethan S. Parker and Griffin Sheridan. Art by Robert Quinn. And letters and design by John J. Hill. This is one I saw on the periphery of my vision on Image Comics, and the cover struck me. Issue 2 has just come out, and as always, the issue 1 dropped down in price. So I thought, I'm just going to take a punt.
He loves a bargain.
I'm going to take a punt. And also, sometimes with an issue 1, you're not quite sure, are you? So sometimes. But this was a massive success, and this is Kill Your Darlings. You heard about this one?
I've heard about it. I've not read it, though. Yeah.
This is, I think I'm not sure whether it's a miniseries. Probably. Oh, it's an Image book, so it'll probably be like a first arc, won't it? That'll be like 6 issues. 8-year-old Rose loves nothing more than to play pretend in a magical land of her own creation. We still do now. Yeah. To her, that world is as real as our own. From her fluffy friends to the terrible evil that lurks at the centre of it all. In one night, the line between fantasy and reality will disappear. An ancient hunger will feed again, and Rose will be pulled into a gruesome saga that began centuries before her birth. Once again, I kind of knew nothing. I didn't read that synopsis. I just thought, this looks quite cool. Saw the art. And
I fucking never read synopsis, you know. I was just going,
I never do.
it looks.
But I tell you, do you know when I first read the synopsis? Usually when I'm doing this show.
Exactly.
And even then, sometimes I edit them when I'm reading them because it gives away too much. Sometimes
a lot of these synopses are for the whole trade, aren't they? I think we've seen that quite a few times.
Yeah. But this book immediately starts. First off, Robert Quinn, the artist, it's beautiful work. It's very sort of it's a very American comic booky kind of style. I can see a Scotty Young influence in it in a kind of way, but less sort of the Scotty Young cartoony style. He's drawing. This is a book that is a lot about kids because where it's set, it's all about this Rose character, and like, you know, she's in an imaginary land. It jumps in tone several times because when it starts, the book starts in 1692 as someone is being burned at the stake. So it's a very dark scene in order to start the book, and from this, it almost feels like. Did you see the Evil Dead remake? You know
Yes.
Back in the day, and the first scene.
Evil Dead 2.
yeah, that's a good pull. But the first scene of that is very much this girl being sort of tied up, and like the parents are there as it's all kicking off. It's a small couple of page scene, but it's very powerful when I read it. And the colouring's just beautiful on it. It then immediately cuts to from that scene of seeing the fire going up and the scream in the sky. It cuts to a bright sunshine land. There's a battlefield, and there's loads of cuddly animals on one side, and there's loads of rats and lizards on the other side. But they're all like little sort of tiny sort of little creatures, and the person who's leading the army of cute creatures is Rose, although she calls herself she has a magical sword called Francine, and she's got like a suit of armor, and it's very epic. It's sort of strangely epic, and it's massive. And then it cuts to her literally in her bedroom surrounded by stuffed animals, just imagining this.
Okay.
You know, so she's a kid that is very much in her own world, and you see when she sees, you know, it's time for dinner or whatever, she goes down. Her mother is having. Interestingly, you never see the mother's face. Like there is a panel where you see the mum, and she's just got her head in her hands because it's someone who's working hard, got lots of bills, clearly a single mother. And Rose really has no sort of concept of it. And a lot of it is all to do as the story goes on. Rose is the sort of kid that when you create these imaginary lands, she's created a map. You know, it's all done in crayons. The art's really good as well because the drawings by the kids, they must have got a kid to do it because it looks authentic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It looks really good, and of course, but she's created this world that she's so completely invested in. When she goes to school, she meets one of her friends who also seems to be. I think they must meet up sometimes for play dates or whatever, and then tell similar stories. And they can't meet up that night. And as Rose is. She gets back to a house that's empty. Her mother's gone to bed early, and Rose is just really angry, and she's looking at one of her drawings, and she gets really upset. And then something happens. She sort of freezes up, and she's just stabbing down at the paper with this Crayola sort of crayon. And her eyes roll back in her head, and she's sort of switching into her imaginary world. And when she switches into that imaginary world, all of her like stuffed animals have been murdered. This book is not an all ages book. This is, despite the colourful beginning, it gets really fucking dark. You know, you have like these, and they've been decapitated. There's blood everywhere. She's walking through her kingdom, and there's blood and there's viscera. Everyone she knows has just been murdered, and she's like, "What's going on? What's going on?" And there is a dark evil. Which, when I was reading it, I really got this sense of, you know, the Never-Ending Story. There was that wolf within the cave.
Yeah.
And there was that sort of sense of like, this is the way that wolf was, it went beyond what the story was. I can see elements of that in it.
Okay.
And as this hunger sort of comes out and it begins sort of breaking out, it then sort of flashes back, and the cliffhanger for the book had me thinking, oh fuck. It was a real. The story had me going along. Well, what is this?
Yeah.
You're in that comic booky sort of fantastical, monsters, but because it was an imaginary land, there was that. What is this? Is she trapped in that imaginary land? And she isn't, because she wakes up outside of her house, and the rest of the neighborhood are there. I won't spoil what it is, but I was like. Oh fuck! What is this? What is this book, and where's it going? I was hugely impressed by this. I go into these number ones thinking, I don't go on, impress me. That's essentially what this.
Yeah.
This
I think the test is going to be later on when we do this whole. Oh, you're going to do a year of number ones, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah.
Which ones you've stuck with? That's what I'm going to be interested.
Yeah,
because I think we're all a bit like this, aren't we? Where we read something and we get incredibly excited by it.
Yeah.
Because we're kind of in the moment. But do we come back to it when it comes out a month or two later?
Without saying too much, I mean, there's surely going to be titles that I'll do in issue 2 and 3 and maybe go no further. That's naturally probably going to happen. There's going to be ones where I'll just read them all. You're going to
have 52 books on your pull list if you don't do that. You don't.
yeah. But so far, so good with it, because the hook of an issue 1 is the hook, isn't it? That is what you it's like.
There's an absolute. We've said it over the years. It's absolute art setting up a story and getting people invested.
Yeah, and they completely do that. Completely. There's a little letter in the back from the authors, just sort of saying, "Wow, we're so happy to be doing." It felt like writers doing their first book and just being like, "We're so happy to be doing this," and it seems like they met who's it? Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman and Matthew Rosenberg. So I'm guessing there must have been a convention or something. They just got some tips and
cool,
sort of thing. But I was thoroughly impressed with this book, considering it was just like a little thumbnail of that's an interesting cover that gives nothing away about the story as well, because the
cover, man.
Yeah, because the cover feels, as well as it being very very designed, it's more sort of. Even though I couldn't see the detail at first, it's sort of like the main girl in like a suit of armor, which I didn't really notice. It almost felt like a grown-up Wizard of Oz cover. Do you know what I mean? It felt like a twisted sort of thing like that. And I thought, I'd go into it. So Kill Your Darlings was definitely a big thumbs up. But back to your point, Tony, I can tell you, there's gonna be books on my 52 that won't go much further.
Going.
There'll be ones that be like.
There's got to be, man. Yeah. Otherwise, we're not made of money, are we?
Yeah. Exactly.
Get on Global Comics. I tell you now, I read Rumpus Rooms on there. All these sort of books that some of the number ones.
I'm going to have to check it out now, because
that's good value. $9.99.
Yeah.
So Kill Your Darlings. If you haven't checked it out now, the second issue has just come out. So I'll be getting that come payday to see where the story goes. So okay, gents. Tony, take us home.
Last one is Shaman Kane, issue 10. Look at that, Dave. Dave's done 10 comics.
Dave.
Isn't that good? It's called Node 1 is the name of the story. It's created by our buddy Dave Broughton. US comic size. I got mine along with a, what did he send me? A Thanos sketch, inked sketch. Lovely.
Nice.
Could attach for all for £8. He's doing it through, you have to buy it through his PayPal. So if you send him £8 to dbroughton@hotmail.co.uk, you can get a copy. Loads happens in this. For the uninitiated, Shaman Kane is a high adventure sci-fi comic in the vein of something I've previously said, something like 2000 AD. I'm going to add into the mix something like heavy metal as well.
Okay,
and I've got a reason for that. He's an armored, trained, and licensed occult operative, and works alone or with a small team. There's a team as well he operates in. He travels between planets, fighting monsters, aliens, supernatural events. In this issue, Kane is working under the direction of a celestial being, and he travels through a dimensional portal to a planet where he finally meets his father. When he meets his father, he's wearing one of those sort of organic, like metal organic suits, which he can, change into a sword and stuff like that, He'd been grabbed out of the zombie wars. So he hadn't met his father before. This is the first time he met him. And his father had been grabbed out of the zombie wars, which they'd all been involved in. And he'd been put in this weaponized armor and tasked with guarding this sort of interdimensional portal stroke gate. demons have been breaching the gate, and Kane was needed to help plant a sentient sort of cybernetic bomb on the other side. So he's given this task by his father, because he can't do it because he's got to stay behind and guard this gate. It becomes like a big running battle. Dave does well with the fight scenes and everything, and then there's this creature called the Mandrake appears, which is part sort of speaking man thing, but seemingly as a tree, who is also a kind of a celestial being with this sort of sharp, sentient man thing, speaking character thing going on, and it looks great. And Dave does a couple of things in this. I compared him to Metal Hurlan, Heavy Metal, because I think Dave's been smoking something here, and I like whatever he's been smoking, because he's tripping out a bit here. There's some real flights of sci-fi fancy here that really work, I think. Like adding in the second half of the book a sentient tree that helps fight. It's great. Just, you got to do stuff like that in sci-fi, because sci-fi allows you to do that sort of thing, I think. And Dave really, this is my favorite. I've worked with Dave a few times now, and I think this is my favorite work he's done. So full admission, I'm an ex-collaborator and friend with Dave. So, but he does this thing where he uses black and white, very Frank Miller actually. Very. Do you remember when Lee changed to do that Frank Miller style? Do you remember that thing?
Yes, he did it for Deathblow, wasn't it?
Yes, it's like a strange change up that Dave's done on a page, but it has a really interesting narrative effect, and it's used to strengthen combat situations and stuff like that. But he slightly changes up the colouring and the way he draws it, and he's working a bit more, I think, with layouts and designs on this. So there's a couple of times you have to change the page to hold it up in a different way and stuff like that. That's good.
Yeah, that's great.
Dave's always had great colouring, I think. I've always admired Dave's colouring. I always thought he's a guy who could easily be colouring the prog, and should be. And these books are really got their own voice now. I really like that this is Dave's book, and he fucks around with it as he wishes. And sci-fi should never just be straight heroics. It should be strange, I think. There should be a twist. Yeah, if not, why are you doing it? Just do an adventure story. And Dave's doing that. He's taking things off in different directions. Pushing his style. My favourite issue so far. So you can get, as I said, I'll repeat it, you can get a copy by emailing via PayPal, dbroughton@hotmail.co.uk. Send him £8 and you'll get a copy of the comic, which is well worth it. Plus, and that's including postage. And you get you likely get a sketch as well, no, Dave, because he does throw things in there. Yeah,
nice.
Shaman Kane 10. There you go, that's my one.
Awesome. And
I think that's
yeah, awesome indeed. So many comics for you to go and check out. Hopefully, you won't have any bad dreams or sleepless nights.
Probably. I get bad dreams a lot.
Yeah, different kind of dreams. We're not going to get into that. But hopefully you enjoyed what we talked about. And if there's anything you want us to discuss in upcoming shows and lead up to good old Christmas and beyond. Christmas.
You got your wish list sorted out?
What, for Christmas?
Yeah.
I just want everyone to be happy.
Peace on earth.
Don't you want the omnibus collection of the recent X-Men comic? I'd rather have that than everyone to be happy.
Oh yeah. Give me that instead. But if you want to email us your quiz, your Viz questions, answers,
you might be in to win a prize.
Yes, you might have an early Christmas present. Likewise, if you've got any other things you want us to shout about in upcoming shows, any comics you want us to check out, or comic initiatives you want us to check out, there's several different ways you can do it. You can email us awesomecomicspod@gmail.com. Follow us on social media @theawesomepod. We'll be retweeting. This is it. It's the afternoon and it's gone.
You're staring into our beautiful eyes.
I know. I can't. I'm so aroused. Yes. Where will we be? We will be retweeting and shouting about comics positivity on all kinds of mediums, including the Awesome Comics Podcast Slack channel group, whatever it is. Join us for a wonderful group of people. It's alive! For a wonderful group of people who just want to talk about comics and comics positivity and all the great stuff in between. Get in touch with us to join up there. Like, even if it's just art threads or just advice for your comic, there's wonderful people.
We're doing
there.
the big October thread, aren't we? That's great in there.
Yeah. So much to check out. And thank you for listening to us, whether it's on the website awesomecomics.podbean.com. Tony's trying to cover his mouth and put me off, but I'm just going to put my hand up so I don't see him. There's if you listen to us there, thank you very much. As well as if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe and leave a review, gets the word out about the show, etc. As well as all the other networks like Spotify, Amazon, Stitcher, Podnose, Podknife. What other networks are we on, Tony?
We're on the Pod Network. Never ever inject nitro 9 crack amphetamine.
Always smoke
Wow, knowledge is power, as our good pals in
the world's on fire, my friend.
G.I. Joe.
That's where you get that from. G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. That's where I get all my life lessons. Plus that cartoon streams 24/7 on YouTube.
Hey.
Look it up; it'll make your day. Anyway, speaking of making your day, where can people find us online, gents? Tony.
NeverOwnAnything.com just put out an episode with Nando Pons from That Comic Smell. We were talking about X Patrol. Do you know what X Patrol is?
No, I've not listened to this one yet.
That's what they call the X-Men in Spain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. I was about to say a joke, but then there was no. I'm not
specifically the Isle of Minorca.
Wow. Okay.
There's so much knowledge on this show.
Isn't it amazing?
It's amazing. Oh, God, I love this. Dan, where can people find you? Tony's holding up his toy knife again.
Just it's fucking socials, man. I'm posting up my Rob things everywhere on every social platform. Robtober, so you can check out Instagram or Twitter.
Follow Dan on Patreon. Go follow his Patreon.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
It's If you hate the social media, Dan, just do your Patreon.
Patreon and Substack. That's where it's at now. If you just want to
because just seeing the emails with the artwork and everything's always.
We had a few mentions of Pat earlier, but go and follow Pat's. He's writing essays 3 or 4 times a week, and today was all about how he approaches writing Doctor Who comics, and it's fucking gold.
Nice.
Yeah.
I've got this Halloween comic on the brew, which they're going to be more next episode, but that's going to be popping up on the Patreon. So if you want to talk about that, go have a look.
When are you going to announce the winner of that competition? Is that next week?
Yeah, I think next week. We kind of been blasting the scripts back.
There's 3 more on there today.
I'm gonna have to be pretty harsh on the deadline. If it's after the deadline, I won't be looking at them.
Okay, fine.
No, we can do all of this after the show
next week,
gents. Yeah. You can find me on social media at Jester Diablo. Thank you for listening, as always, to this episode. It's Halloween special next week. Ooh, so we're all gonna be dressing up. You won't know because this is an audio only.
I'm dressing.
So the true horror is naked.
Is when you see my fluffy tail.
I think we had to do one once when it was like, was it on Halloween? And like, we had to be cautious of people fucking ringing the doorbell and knocking for stuff.
Yeah.
Don't ring my doorbell.
I mean, you can recreate that if you want. I'll just ring a doorbell.
Someone's knocking at my door. Yeah. Fuck off! I'm self-isolating. Right. Anyway,
take one and fuck off.
Seriously though, folks, have a happy and safe Halloween. And next week we'll be telling you to read more horror comics. But until then, wherever you are in the world, we hope you're happy, healthy. Tony, look us in the eyes. Look us in the eyes. Say you love them. Say you love the listeners. Oh, he's nodding his head furiously.
I've got the Blood on Satan's Claw to watch later.
Oh, nice one.
Nice.
I've never seen that.
Yeah,
no.
years ago.
Yeah, I haven't seen it for years. And I've got Night of the Demon, which I'm reliably told has the scene where a man gets his knob clawed off by a Yeti.
What a beautiful thing to think about as we sign off. So have a brilliant week, read loads of comics, make loads of comics, and as always, what should they do, guys?
Stay awesome.
Stay awesome.
Bye, everyone.
Boom.
Boom.